Chapter 72. The sun in July was scorching. However, no matter how scorching the sun was, it was still inferior to the human heart. Under the sun, Little Bean led tens of thousands of people forward slowly. Tens of thousands of people didn't look mighty. Instead, they gave people a sense of oppression. Someone in the crowd whispered, "What happened? What's going on? Why did you suddenly call everyone here?" Someone who knew a little bit about the situation said, "I heard that something big happened in the hunter group. All the hunters are dead. It was done by the people from base C10. The others heard it and couldn't believe it. That's impossible. Keep bragging." In the eyes of ordinary people, hunters were superhuman beings. In their eyes, hunters were so powerful that they were close to gods. He could easily destroy a building with a casual blow. But now, all the hunters were dead. They couldn't believe it. At the same time, what was even more unbelievable was that the killers were from base C10. Weren't they here to deliver some blood? Didn't they say that they wanted to develop together? Someone thought of something and asked in a low voice, "Where's the mysterious master? Why didn't he do anything?" The others also whispered in agreement. "Yeah, this is related to the whole base. Why didn't the mysterious master do anything?" Someone immediately retorted, "This happened in the middle of the night, brother. Doesn't the mysterious master need to sleep? Besides, the mysterious master isn't the nanny of the hunter group. He can't keep an eye on the hunter group all the time." Everyone nodded. The person who spoke first felt everyone's gaze and didn't dare to say anything else. Hearing these people's words, Happy turned to look at Mo Sure. But Mo Sure didn't seem to hear it. She muttered in her heart, "Is Brother Mo the mysterious master?" More than 40 minutes later, they went out of the first line of defense and came to the hunter group's headquarters between the first and second lines of defense. There was a large open space at the entrance of the headquarters. There were all kinds of fitness equipment around the open space. In the middle of the open space was a huge playground that was several times bigger than an ordinary one. Normally, the hunters would train and spar on the field. But today, more than 1,000 hunters in the headquarters were escorted to the center of the playground. More than 200 corpses were placed next to them. More than 100 headless corpses belonged to the hunters. The rest were all hunters, including Regiment Commander Yang Kong. On the rostrum on the north side of the field, Lun Yen was smiling as he looked at the more than 1,000 hunters below. Beside him was the chief of the base. It seemed that the chief of the base was sitting on the chair as usual. However, there were 2 liver swellings on his face. Behind him, there were 2 hunters, one on his left and one on his right, watching over him. A moment later, Xiao Dou brought the 10,000 people to the field. When everyone saw the scene before them, although they were shocked, they did not dare to say anything. He was led by Little Bean to a place not far from the rostrum. On the rostrum, Lun Yen had a bright smile on his face when he saw the 10,000 people arrive. He opened his mouth and said, "I'm really sorry to disturb everyone." As a level 6 psychokinesis, as long as he was within the range of his telekinesis, everyone would be able to hear every word he said. He continued, "We only have one goal this time, to take over your base C1. Although his words were very calm, his tone was full of dominance. Then, he pointed at the more than 1,000 hunters and the more than 100 hunters' corpses. He said, "It's very simple. Those who are obedient, stand up. Those who are disobedient, lie down." The more than 10,000 people were all shocked. The strongest people in base C1, the more than 100 hunters, were really dead. As for the over 1,000 corpse hunters, it was clear that they had surrendered. The remaining hunters, although in other parts of the base, had not come over yet. But the more than 2,000 people were just hunters. In front of the hunters and the powerful psychokinesis of base C10, what could they do? Moreover, even the chief of the base was in their hands. Lun Yen smiled brightly under the sun. He made an inviting gesture to the chief of the base next to him. He said, "Now, let's invite the most respected chief to say a few words to everyone. All of you had better listen carefully. The chief's words are all true and meaningful. This is very educational." The chief of the base's face was gloomy. He slowly stood up. He straightened his chest. He raised his head. He stood proudly. After a while he said, "You can kill or torture them as you wish, but these people are innocent." Lun Yen smiled and shook his head. "Chief, don't worry. I'm not an executioner. These people will listen to you. You just have to move your mouth and make them behave. You will be good, I will be good, and everyone will be good. As he spoke, he made an inviting gesture again. Hearing this, the chief of the base frowned. He slowly came in front of the microphone. Then he slowly said, "Brothers and sisters, I, Xianxia, am incompetent and have caused your lives to be threatened. I'm sorry." Lun Yan smiled and said, "Chief, since I was young, my father has taught me not to say any unnecessary nonsense. If I say anything, do you know what to do?" As he spoke, he gently rubbed his cheeks. "Use the sole of your shoe to slap your face." Before he finished speaking, the level 8 hunter next to him actually took off his shoe. He held the shoe in his hand and looked at the chief. When everyone saw this scene, anger rose in their hearts. This was completely insulting the chief of the base in public. "Chief, you've gone too far. Let the chief go." Lun Yan shrugged and said to the chief of the base, "Xianxia. Chief, the children are not very obedient. Tell them. Remember, don't talk nonsense. Otherwise, the children won't like to hear it, and I won't like to hear it either." The chief of the base, Xianxia, looked at the more than 10,000 people below. After a moment of silence, at a certain moment, the dim light in his eyes slowly disappeared. His brows also slowly relaxed. He said, "This is the darkest moment since the establishment of our base. However, please believe that this is only the darkness before dawn. Soon, the sun will shine on the earth. And the mysterious powerhouse will be the one who will tear open the curtain of darkness." After a few simple words, he turned his head. He looked straight at Lun Yan. Head high, chest out. Body straight like a spear. He was already prepared to be killed by Lun Yan. Everyone's heart was shaken. The mysterious powerhouse. Someone suddenly yelled. The mysterious powerhouse will definitely appear. He will definitely come. Seeing this, a ball of anger rose in Lun Yan's heart. These people were clearly like ants in front of him. At this moment, they had no intention of yielding. He wanted to kill these people to establish his authority. But he thought silently. The reason why these people dared to be so presumptuous. Obviously, it was the mysterious powerhouse that gave them hope. Only by killing the mysterious powerhouse in front of these people could they completely lose hope. Since that was the case, he wanted to see how strong this mysterious powerhouse was. However, the angrier he was, the brighter the smile on his face. His smile was as bright as spring flowers blooming. Clap, clap, clap. He clapped his hands and said, as expected of the chief of the base, "Well said. I've learned a lot. Actually, I haven't finished what I said just now. For those who are disobedient, my father will use the sole of his shoe to beat them, but I have my own way of doing it. Chief, I'll get someone to give you a demonstration. You have to look carefully." Turning his head, he said to the more than 10,000 people, "All of you watch carefully too." Then he waved his hand and said, "Bring that fierce woman up." Chapter 73. "Bring that fierce girl up here," Lun Yan said with a smile. Soon, the short-haired hot girl was brought up. She was carried by a hunter and thrown onto the rostrum. At the same time, another hunter carried a 2-meter-tall wooden stone cross and erected it on the rostrum. Lun Yan smiled brightly and glanced at everyone. Finally, his eyes fell on the chief and said, "This is how I deal with disobedient people." Then, he nodded to the hunter next to him. The hunter immediately lifted the hot girl up and stretched out her arms to both sides, pressing her tightly against the wooden cross. Lun Yan's smile gradually became cruel. He used his telekinesis and a flying knife was suspended in the air. Then, it quickly flew toward the hot girl. Bang! There was a muffled sound. The flying knife instantly pierced through the hot girl's right hand. It directly nailed her hand to the wooden cross. On the rostrum, more than 10,000 people were shocked. At the same time, anger rose. The hot girl's face instantly turned pale. However, not only did she not beg for mercy, she did not even scream. She gritted her teeth. He kept making gurgling noises from his mouth. Seeing this, the chief of the base, Xianxia, growled. "Lun Yan, you're too cruel." Lun Yan's smile was as bright as a flower. He looked back at Ma Xianxia and agreed. You're right. Since she doesn't want to surrender, I can only be cruel. Then, 4 more flying knives flew out from his body. They slowly flew toward the hot girl. The hot girl's eyes were wide open. There was no fear on her face. Instead, she was full of anger. She cursed. You pervert. Kill me if you dare. If you don't kill me, you're not a man. Lu Nian heard this and the corner of his mouth twitched. Any man who heard such words would probably explode on the spot. But the smile on Lu Nian's face became even brighter. The flying knives increased their speed and were about to pierce the hot girl's feet, left hand, and forehead. Mo Shi sighed in his heart. There was actually such a pervert in the world. Then, he used his telekinesis and was about to attack. After all, back at the dam, Hot Chick had protected him and Zombie Sister in name. But at this moment, a heart-wrenching scream suddenly came from the crowd. Dad! Everyone turned their heads to look at him. Lu Nian's flying knife also paused slightly. A 17 or 18-year-old girl rushed out from the crowd. He fell into the pile of hunter corpses beside him. Hugging Regiment Commander Yang Kang's corpse, he cried bitterly. Dad! Dad, wake up! Everyone sighed inwardly when they saw this. It turned out that this girl was the daughter of Regiment Commander Yang Kang. About 10 years ago, Mo Shi had saved his family. At that time, she was only an 8-year-old girl. Now that more than 10 years had passed, she was already a 17 or 18-year-old girl. She had just seen those flying daggers about to pierce into the hot girl's body. He couldn't bear to look at her, so he subconsciously turned his head away. In the end, he accidentally saw Yang Kang's corpse in the pile of corpses beside him. That was why she cried out. At this moment, when the others saw the girl lying on top of Yang Kang's corpse, they were all shocked. The leader of the hunting group was the strongest person in the entire base. He had actually been killed. On the rostrum, Lu Nian's eyes lit up when he saw the girl. He shouted, "Bring her up here." One of the hunters walked over immediately. He grabbed the girl's shoulder and lifted her up. The girl kept struggling, crying and yelling. Dad! Dad! Because of too much grief, her voice was a little hoarse. But that hunter didn't relent at all. He grabbed the girl's shoulder and was about to bring her up to the rostrum. However, at this moment, he suddenly felt a chill on his ankle. He looked down and suddenly felt his scalp tingle. He actually had goosebumps all over his body. He saw that his right ankle was tightly grabbed by a cold hand. And the owner of this hand was actually Yang Kang. He carefully looked at Yang Kang's chest and forehead. He saw that there was a chopstick-sized bloody hole in Yang Kang's chest and forehead. The bloody hole in his forehead went from his forehead to the back of his head. He was clearly dead. How could he move? Or rather, he didn't die at all. But how was this possible? His heart was pierced. His head was directly penetrated. How could he not die? He couldn't believe it. At the same time, he felt a chill in his heart. Did he see a ghost? Thinking of this, he suddenly lifted his right foot. But that ice-cold hand held onto his right foot tightly. So much so that his whole body was lifted off the ground. But Yang Kang, who didn't seem to have any consciousness, still didn't let go. Seeing this scene, the expressions of everyone present were all moved. Dad! Dad! Seeing that her father wasn't dead, Yang Kang's daughter immediately burst into tears. She kept struggling, wanting to rush to her father's side. On the rostrum, Lu Nian frowned slightly. He said to the hunter, "What are you waiting for?" That hunter immediately swung his leg. He threw Yang Kang far away. Then, he grabbed his daughter and brought her up to the rostrum. Lu Nian looked Yang Kang's daughter up and down for a moment and couldn't help praising, "Good, good, good." His eyes flashed with excitement. Then he waved his hand and said, "Take her aside first. When we're done here, I'll have a good talk with her." Dad! My dad isn't dead yet. Save him, please save him. Yang Kang's daughter knelt on the ground and begged bitterly. But Lu Nian didn't respond to her. He just reluctantly withdrew his gaze from her. Then, his gaze fell on the short-haired hot girl. He smiled brightly. I hate short-haired women the most in my life, and I hate disobedient short-haired women even more. Now, let's continue. As he spoke, the 4 throwing knives had already approached the hot girl. They kept moving in front of her. At the same time, Lun Yan's gaze swept over the more than 10,000 people. He joked. I heard that there's a mysterious expert in your base. If there is, shouldn't he show up? But he still hasn't shown up. Isn't the so-called mysterious expert too cowardly? He wanted to humiliate their so-called mysterious expert in front of everyone. He wanted to completely shatter the hope in their hearts. The smile on his face became wider, and his voice became louder. Mysterious expert, listen carefully. If you're still a man, stand out. Otherwise, from now on, I'll kill one person every second. At this point, he signaled to a hunter with his eyes. Let's begin. That hunter immediately walked into the crowd. Without saying anything, he stretched out his hand and slapped down on a middle-aged woman. The surrounding people all exclaimed. How terrifying was a hunter's strength. With this slap, this woman didn't even have the qualifications to become minced meat. She would probably be directly smashed into meat paste. Just as the crowd exclaimed, "Rip!" the hunter's body instantly split into several pieces. He was thrown far away in all directions. At this moment, the smile on Lun Yan's face suddenly froze. Chapter 74. That hunter was about to kill that woman. But in the next moment, there was a tearing sound. He had already been torn into several pieces, flying far away. Everyone present exclaimed in surprise. But in the next moment, they reacted. A mysterious expert. In base C10, all the hunters' expressions changed. They didn't see anyone make a move. A hunter was suddenly torn apart just like that. He didn't even have the time to scream. This scene was too strange. One had to know that this was a level 5 hunter. His body was far stronger than ordinary people. To tear a level 5 hunter apart, one would need at least the strength of a level 6 hunter to do that. But in this situation, it was obvious that psychokinesis had made a move. But how was that possible? If a psychokinesis was strong enough, it wouldn't be a problem to detonate a hunter's head. But it was impossible to detonate a hunter's head. After all, even someone as strong as their captain Lun Yan couldn't detonate a hunter's head with just telekinesis. Not to mention tearing a hunter apart. If it could really be done, how strong would the psychokinesis be? On the rostrum, the bright smile on Lun Yan's face suddenly froze. As a level 6 psychokinesis, he knew how difficult it was to tear apart a body with telekinesis. Psychokinesis was strong because telekinesis was invisible and immaterial, and couldn't be defended against. If one controlled flying daggers, they could come and go without a trace. As for the power formed by telekinesis, it wasn't very strong. Level 6 psychokinesis could only control objects within 60 kilograms. With this kind of power, it was impossible to tear apart a normal person. Not to mention tearing apart a hunter whose body was hundreds or thousands of times stronger than a normal person. But now, that level 5 hunter had been torn apart so easily. It could be seen how terrifying the telekinesis of psychokinesis was. It was probably far beyond level 10 psychokinesis. It was an existence on another level. Because of this, the smile on Lun Yan's face froze. Tearing. Just as he hadn't come back to his senses. Another hunter's body was instantly torn into several pieces. He flew far away. Under the sun, only fresh blood was left. Tearing. 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 The sound of cloth being torn could be heard continuously. One by one, the hunters were torn apart. It didn't matter if it was a level 5 or level 6 hunter. Or a level 7 hunter. No one was spared. The eyes of the level 8 hunter under Lun Yan's command were filled with terror. The mysterious expert had made his move. What those people said was true. That mysterious expert was actually so powerful. He was so strong that he couldn't even imagine it and couldn't comprehend it. When his first comrade was torn apart, he immediately scanned the crowd. He wanted to find that mysterious expert. As long as they could find him, more than 50 hunters would approach him at the same time. Together with Captain Lun Yan's level 6 psychokinesis. In that case, it shouldn't be difficult to take down this mysterious expert. But he soon realized how foolish and ignorant his idea was. That was because his companions were being rapidly torn apart one by one. His gaze swept through the crowd a few times, but he didn't find any abnormalities at all. He placed his hopes on Lun Yan. Lun Yan was also a powerful psychokinesis. He hoped that Lun Yan would be able to resist for a while or find that mysterious expert. However, he discovered that Lun Yan, who had never panicked before, had an extremely frightened expression on his face at this moment. Seeing this level 8 psychokinesis understood. Captain Lun Yan was far from being a match for that mysterious expert. He immediately regretted it in his heart. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have come to Snatch Base C1. Now that they were facing such a powerful psychokinesis, what could they do? The only thing they could do was to run. Only by running out of the range of that psychokinesis would they have a chance of survival. Thinking of this, he hurriedly ran into the distance. One step was 180 meters. Then he took a second step. However, he was only halfway through the second step. Tearing. His body was also torn into several pieces. His head flew more than 100 meters away and rolled at Lun Yan's feet. Lun Yan's face was already pale. He had tried to use his psychokinesis to resist just now. However, the moment his psychokinesis came out of his body, it was easily suppressed by a wave of psychokinesis that was as vast as the sea and as imposing as a mountain. At this moment, his psychokinesis could only be retracted back into his body. He couldn't even send out half of his psychokinesis. Tearing. He could only watch as his subordinates were torn into several pieces one by one. The 10,000 people below the rostrum were all surprised and happy at this moment. Although this scene looked very bloody, none of them felt that it was wrong. Little Bean looked at Mo Shi's back from a few meters away. The shock in her heart was even greater than before. He didn't need to do anything. Just his thoughts were enough to tear these hunters apart. He could even tear apart a level 8 hunter. How strong was Mo Shi now? In just half a year, Mo Shi's psychokinesis seemed to have become many times stronger than when he went to base C9. This kind of growth speed was too shocking. Beside Mo Shi, Old Li was so shocked that he couldn't close his legs for a long time. Happy was also surprised. His mouth slightly open. She looked at Brother Mo beside her. Brother Mo didn't move at all. It was as if all this wasn't done by him at all. Could it be that she was wrong? Brother Mo wasn't the mysterious powerhouse at all? But Brother Mo's expression was calm and composed. It was far from the shock and surprise of the people around him. Then, was he really the mysterious powerhouse? On the rostrum, Base Chief Ma Yongshir's eyes were filled with excitement. His gaze kept sweeping over the 10,000 people below the rostrum. He was trying to find the mysterious powerhouse. However, there were too many people. It was difficult to find him in a short time. Tearing. The sound of cloth being torn continued. The surrounding hunters all seemed to have gone crazy at this moment, crazily fleeing into the distance. However, none of the hunters were able to escape. On the contrary, the faster they ran, the faster they died. In the end, only 2 people were left. One was Lun Yan, whose face was pale and didn't move for a long time. The other was a level 5 hunter who didn't run from the beginning to the end. That level 5 hunter watched as his companion, who had just escaped 200 meters away, was torn into pieces by an invisible force. He shook his head in despair. He took one last look at Lun Yan and slowly closed his eyes. At the same time he said loudly, "You can kill me, you can kill all of us, but please let Captain Lu go." Below the rostrum, among the 10,000 people, Mo Shi's psychokinesis paused for a moment. It wasn't that he planned to let these 2 people go. These people were cruel and provoked him in public. This was a slap to his face in front of everyone. How could he let them go? He was just a little surprised. This hunter was about to die, but instead of thinking for himself, he begged him to let this cruel and perverted Lun Yan go. This was something he didn't expect. Chapter 75. After saying those words, the hunter waited for his body to be torn apart. To be honest, they had only themselves to blame for doing such a thing and being torn apart now. He could accept any result. However, after waiting for a moment, his body was not torn apart. He understood that the mysterious powerhouse had given him a chance to speak. He suddenly seemed to have grasped at the last life-saving straw. He hurriedly said, "Captain Lu is also a pitiful person. He has a sister who is a hunter. When the virus first broke out, his parents died. The siblings relied on each other. Later, the two of them became psychokinesis and hunter respectively. In recent years, the zombies and mutated beasts near our base C10 have become stronger and stronger for some reason. The activity range of our base's hunter group has been greatly reduced. The leader of the base knows that this can't go on, so he sent our team to contact other bases. He wants to find a way to transfer the 120,000 people in our base out. Of course it's difficult. However, our base's hunter group is very strong. Although they are weaker than the monsters near our base, as long as we are away from base C10, our hunter group strength can sweep away any other creatures in the wilderness. We went to base C8 and base C7, but they refused to accept us. Later, Captain Liu brought us to contact base C6. In the end, the hunter group of base C6 said that they would accept us, but they secretly drugged our food with hallucinogens. All of us had hallucinations in our minds, and we didn't know what we were doing. Captain Liu's telekinesis is very strong, and he was the first to wake up. But when he woke up, he saw those people from base C6 killing our companions. And her sister was actually raped by a bastard from base C6. At this point, he had begun to gnash his teeth. At that time, Captain Liu's telekinesis had not fully recovered. He could only watch everything happen and watch that bastard kill his sister. Perhaps he was stimulated, but Captain Liu's telekinesis actually increased by 2 levels in a short period of time. Then, he killed hundreds of hunters from base C6 and escaped with us, who had just recovered a little bit of consciousness. Since then, Captain Liu changed. He became more and more cruel. We also understand him. I brought Commander Yang's daughter up just now because Commander Yang's daughter looks a lot like his sister. Everyone was silent when they heard this. No one was born a villain or a pervert. He must have suffered unbearable pain. On the rostrum, Lun Yen was already in tears. His legs gave way, and he sat down on the ground. The 4 flying daggers were out of his control. Finally, with a few clangs, it fell to the ground. He did not cry out loud. Only the tears, which seemed to have been suppressed for a long time, finally found an outlet and gushed out. At this moment, he was no longer the ruthless and powerful psychokinesis from before. Instead, he looked like a child who had just lost his mother. The eyes of the base chief were no longer as sharp as before. Instead, it flickered slightly. Even the short-haired hot girl was somewhat moved. She seemed to have forgotten the pain in her hand and slowly opened her mouth to speak. Can we find a way to cripple his psychokinesis and then let the two of them leave? The level 5 hunter's voice was choked with sobs. He raised his voice. I've harmed so many people. Even death can't wipe out my crimes. But I beg you to let Captain Liu go. He's really a pitiful person. I beg you. Everyone was silent. However, Mo sure did not think much of it. What a joke. You came to base C1 and killed so many people. You want me to let him go just by saying, pitiful person? Did he lose his brain when he was having diarrhea? There were many pitiful people in this world. There was a saying that a pitiful person must have something to hate. Since you dare to come to base C1 to kill people, then stay. Thinking of this, he was about to activate his psychokinesis. But at this moment, on the rostrum, Lun Yen, who was sitting on the ground, looked like a child who had just lost his mother. His psychokinesis suddenly probed out of his body. He tried to control the flying daggers that had just fallen to the ground. Mo sure had been shrouding him with his psychokinesis. Naturally, he had already noticed when his psychokinesis had just probed out of his body. He suddenly understood. So that's how it is. It turned out that Lun Yen and that hunter were just acting. They knew that they would not be able to escape death today, so they put on such a sad show. Of course, looking at Lun Yen's painful appearance just now, it did not seem like it was an act. It was very likely that he had really encountered those things. But at this moment, they were using such a thing to win the sympathy of the crowd. At the same time, it was also to numb the mysterious powerhouse and make him lower his guard. As a psychokinesis, Lun Yen's psychokinesis was far inferior to Mo Shure's. But he could vaguely sense the location of the mysterious powerhouse's psychokinesis. He planned to wait for the mysterious powerhouse to lower his guard before he suddenly attacked. Using his psychokinesis to control the flying daggers, he would instantly kill the mysterious powerhouse. Even if the mysterious powerhouse was as powerful as the mysterious powerhouse, it would be very easy for a level 6 psychokinesis to sneak attack him if he was not prepared. In their eyes, This was their only chance. Thinking of this, Wuxia sneered in his heart. How could a mere firefly dare to compete with the sun and the moon? Then, his psychokinesis moved slightly. At this moment, Lun Yan's psychokinesis had just probed out of his body. He was still slightly delighted in his heart. The mysterious powerhouse's psychokinesis had indeed not noticed him. Then, his psychokinesis probed the flying daggers on the ground. However, at this moment, before his psychokinesis touched the flying daggers, an incomparably tyrannical psyche power, like a mountain, suddenly came crashing down from all directions. Lun Yan's psychokinesis did not have any resistance and was instantly suppressed back into his body. His expression changed drastically. His face was filled with horror. The next moment, rip, Lun Yan heard the sound of his body being torn apart. It was not as clear as the sound of others. The tearing sound from his body was very loud. It was even a little ear-piercing. Rip. He also heard the sound of the hunter's body being torn apart. Both of their heads flew high into the air at the same time. Their consciousness still existed for a few seconds after their bodies died. In these few seconds, both of them were filled with incomparable fear, despair, and regret. If they had known that base C1 had such a powerful psychokinesis overseeing it, they would not have dared to come even if they were beaten to death. Wuxia coldly looked at the two people's bodies being torn into pieces. There was no expression on his face. The more than 10,000 people at the scene who were moved by Lun Yan's story all had a drastic change in expression. Even the chief of the base, Xianxia, was shocked. They did not know that Lun Yan planned to use psychokinesis to sneak attack. In their opinion, Lun Yan was indeed very pitiful. They were even considering whether to give Lun Yan a lighter punishment. They could break his hands and feet, or cripple his psychokinesis. They could let him reform in the farm of base C1 or use other methods. But at least spare his life. But no one expected that the mysterious powerhouse would not give him a chance at all. Instantly torn apart. This made everyone's hearts. In addition to respect for the mysterious powerhouse, there was also a lot of fear and dread. The mysterious powerhouse had indeed saved the base several times. But he was not a saint, nor was he a good person. Nor was he a soft-hearted person. Chapter 76. On the field in front of the rostrum, everyone was awestruck. Before, they had pure worship or respect for the mysterious strong man. But from now on, everyone had a trace of fear for the mysterious strong man. Together, it was awe, respect and fear. Many people were moved by Lun Yan's story. If it were them, they would probably destroy Lun Yan's mind power and let him go. Even those who were more hard-hearted and never intended to let Lun Yan go would hesitate for a moment. However, the mysterious strong man did not hesitate at all. Lun Yan was instantly torn into pieces by the strong mind power. It was obvious that the mysterious strong man was not a good person. He was not a saint or a soft-hearted person. In the past, some people would occasionally complain. They said that the mysterious strong man should show up. Since he was so strong, he should lead the hunting group and set an example for everyone. The greater the power, the greater the responsibility. But now, no one dared to have such thoughts. Perhaps it was a good thing for them that the mysterious strong man did not show up. Not far from Wuxia, Xiao Dou stared at Wuxia's back. His eyes were full of shock. When he was in the zombie farm, he always thought that Wuxia was a very easygoing person. He was not ambitious and stood aloof from worldly affairs. He was content with the status quo. Later, at base C9, he realized that Wuxia was not as easygoing as he seemed. Millions of corpses and rivers of blood. But now he knew that he was wrong. Wuxia was not only cruel to zombies, but also to humans. He was ruthless and decisive. Not only were the enemies afraid of him, but even the people in the base began to revere him. Beneath his easygoing and tranquil appearance was an incomparably tyrannical strength and decisive means of killing. The psychological impact of this contrast was simply too great. It seemed that he should stay away from Wuxia if he had nothing to do in the future. The farther the better. On the rostrum, the base chief did not expect the mysterious strong man to be so ruthless. After a moment of shock, he suddenly remembered something. He hurriedly shouted, "Find a doctor and save Commander Yang." Only then did the crowd recover from the shock from before. Yang Kang's daughter also ran in the direction of Yang Kang again. Soon, The doctor made a simple diagnosis. Then he raised his head and said in disbelief, "His heart and head were pierced, but he's still alive. This is simply a miracle." The base chief hurriedly asked, "Could it be because he's a hunter and his body is much stronger than ordinary people?" The doctor shook his head and replied, "Although this is also a factor, the most important factor is his own willpower. He must have something unfinished or someone he can't let go of." When the members of the body hunters heard this, they all looked at Yang Kang's daughter, Yang Xiaoyan. They all knew how much Commander Yang loved his daughter. His wife had passed away several years ago. He had raised his daughter all by himself. Other than the work of the hunting group, he spent almost all his energy on his daughter. If there was someone in his heart that he couldn't let go of, it would definitely be his daughter, Yang Xiaoyan. "It's his daughter, Yang Xiaoyan," a corpse hunter said. When everyone heard this, they also recalled the scene just now. Yang Kang's heart and head were clearly pierced, and it had been 6 or 7 hours since he was pierced. If it was anyone else, they would have died long ago. But not only did he not die, and when his daughter was taken away, he actually reached out and grabbed the hunter's ankle. How strong must his willpower be to be able to do that? No matter how strong his willpower was, he couldn't do that. Perhaps only a father like him could do that. At this moment, they looked at Yang Kang again. His right hand was still grabbing the hunter's ankle. When the doctor carefully examined it, he found that the bones in his hand were broken. It was obviously broken when the hunter tried to shake off his hand. Everyone was shocked again. A father's love was so great. A few corpse hunters, with reverence, carefully carried Yang Kang onto the stretcher. They slowly sent him to the infirmary of the hunting group. Everywhere they passed, everyone stared at the unconscious Yang Kang. Yang Kang's daughter, Yang Xiaoyan, had been holding her father's hand tightly. Tears had already blurred her eyes. In fact, no one knew that there were 3 reasons why Yang Kang was still alive. First, it was his physique. Second, it was because he was worried. Third, it was because he had taken the recovery medicine given by Mo Shi. At that time, he was just an ordinary person. He couldn't completely digest the medicine. After nearly 10 years, the medicine was already less than 1/10 of it. The remaining trace of medicine, although it couldn't completely restore him. However, he was barely able to hang on to his last breath. Otherwise, no matter how strong his willpower was, he couldn't have survived such a serious injury. From this, it could be seen how crazy the recovery medicine produced by the system was. But at this time, Mo Shi didn't know this. He didn't plan to give Yang Kang another bottle of recovery medicine. With Yang Kang's physique, since he could live until now, it shouldn't be difficult for him to keep his life. At this time, his gaze fell on the hot short-haired girl on the rostrum. There were thousands of corpse hunters in the hunting group, and tens of thousands of people present. She was the only one who dared to curse at Lun Yen. And she knew that as long as she endured for a while, she would be safe when the mysterious expert made his move. But she still refused to surrender. Even if she raised her hand for a second, it would be humiliating for her. How could a girl be so unyielding to such an extent? It made all the men present blush with shame. Mo Shi also admired him in his heart. A moment later, the base chief began to instruct everyone to deal with the corpses. At the same time, he also sent out some corpse hunters to persuade these civilians to go back first. Mo Shi also followed the crowd and walked towards the corpse field. As he walked, he recalled the feeling of using his telekinesis to tear those people apart. In fact, although he had reached level 9 psychokinesis, he could only lift things under 90 kilograms. With this kind of strength, it was impossible to tear a human body apart. However, after reaching level 9, his telekinesis was able to probe the human body to the finest detail. Which muscles of the human body were the easiest to tear? Which bones were the weakest? Where had there been a fracture or an injury? He could easily detect all of this with just a probing of his mind power. Then he could start from these places and combine it with a strength of 90 kilograms and below to do all this. The principle was like a skilled butcher dismembering a cow. Once he was familiar with the structure of the cow's body, he could do it with ease. Mo Shi thought to himself that when his telekinesis was stronger in the future, even if he encountered those powerful mutated zombies, he could easily dismember their bodies. That night, after 12 o'clock, Mo Shi, as usual, planned to double and specify the rewards. But he suddenly had a thought. He had just done such a big thing today. Maybe he could try and see if he could sign other good things. Chapter 77. According to Mo Shi's original understanding, the event's sign-in mechanism had to be immediately signed in right after the event was completed. Now that an entire day had passed, the sign-in probably wouldn't have any effect at all. But how would he know if he didn't give it a try? Thinking of this, Mo Shi asked in his mind, "System, can I still use the event sign-in now?" The system's voice sounded frowny face yes. Mo Shi was a little surprised and asked, "Didn't you say that only after signing in immediately after doing a specific event can there be a specific event reward?" The system's voice sounded frowny face. The system never said that. The host has misunderstood. Mo Shi was a little speechless. It turned out that his understanding of the event reward mechanism had been wrong for such a long time. Thinking about it carefully, the system didn't seem to say that he had to sign in immediately after doing something to activate the event reward mechanism. Then let's sign in. Mo Shi rubbed his hands expectantly. Sign in successful. Sign in event. Use psychokinesis to tear apart the enemy. Sign in reward. Doomsday tier, memory plunder. Huh? Mo Shi was a little surprised. It turned out to be 2 skills. In the past, only when the system upgraded would there be more than 2 skill rewards. Pleasantly surprised, he opened the skill description. Doomsday tier. Within the range of psychokinesis, you can use psychokinesis to find the enemy's weakness and tear it apart. AoE skills consume a lot of psychokinesis. Use with caution. Memory plunder. You can use psychokinesis to forcibly plunder the memories of others. The person whose memories are plundered will have a strong impact on the brain and will lose their memories. Their intelligence will also be irreversibly damaged. Use with caution. Mo Shi was secretly shocked when he saw the descriptions of these 2 skills. These 2 skills were very violent and domineering skills. This was probably in line with the temperament of a dragon. Especially this memory plunder. Mo Shi actually wanted to ask Lu Nian and the others about base C10 during the day. What exactly happened there? The mutated beasts and zombies nearby were actually stronger than other places. But there were too many people during the day, so it wasn't easy to ask. He couldn't be bothered to do anything else. In any case, he didn't plan to leave base C1 for the time being. He would think about it when he went out later. Therefore, he killed them all on the spot. But now that he had memory plunder, if he encountered such a situation in the future, he would directly plunder their memories. Wouldn't that save a lot of trouble? In the future with these 2 skills, he would have 2 more trump cards. Thinking of this, he shook his head helplessly and sighed. Sigh, he had too many trump cards. Sometimes, he didn't even know which one to play. This was also a happy annoyance. The next day, Mo Shi resumed his peaceful life. As for how the body hunters would regroup and how Yang Kong would recover, that was not his concern. However, while they were chatting, he heard Old Li mention something. Little Mo, that hot chick from yesterday. Do you know why he would rather die than surrender? Mo Shi was interested in this matter and asked, "What's wrong?" Happy had just gotten some food from the cafeteria, and he passed it to Mo Shi and Old Li. He also looked at Old Li curiously. Old Li opened the lunchbox and drank a mouthful of porridge. He said, "Happy is a good child. Whoever marries her will definitely be blessed by 8 generations of ancestors." As he spoke, he glanced at Mo Shi intentionally. Mo Shi also drank a mouthful of porridge and said, "You sound like you're scolding someone." Old Li glared at Mo Shi. He thought to himself, this kid always interrupts when we're talking about serious matters. He shook his head and continued, "I heard from Mr. Wang, who wears bottle-bottomed glasses, that when Hot Chick was young, the base had not been built yet. The zombie virus had just arrived, and the world was in chaos. In order to fight for supplies, people would kill and set fires. They would do anything. One day, a gunman broke into their house. He snatched a big bag of food and water and even shot her mother to death. At that time, when the gunman was packing the food and water, he put down the gun. Hot Chick always thought that if her father had been braver, he could have pounced on him and snatched the gun. That way, her mother would not have been shot to death. But at that time, her father kept his hands up and stood facing the wall, trembling. From then on, she hated seeing people raise their hands the most. Hence yesterday, she would rather die than raise her hands for even a second. When Emo Sure and Happy heard this, they both sighed. Oldly sighed in the end. There are all kinds of fathers in this world. There are Yang Kong who misses his daughter so much that he has to force himself to endure even when he's injured. There are also fathers like Hot Chick's father. Say. At the same time, in Chief Ma Yongshire's office, Chief Ma Yongshire was sitting behind his desk. The bruises on his face had not completely disappeared. There were two people sitting on the sofa in front of his desk. One of them was the vice leader of the hunter group, Guo Jutao, who had always been a little sissy. 2 days ago, he led a team of 10 people to explore the area around the base. He had just returned today. The other person was the person in charge of the base's laboratory. A woman, Professor Chen. Chief Ma Yongshire looked at Guo Jutao and said in a low voice, "The doctor said that Leader Yang's life can be saved." Guo Jutao was instantly delighted and said in a sissy voice, "That's great. With the leader's body, it won't be long before he fully recovers. The leader is the soul of the hunter group. The hunter group can't do without him." Chief Ma Yongshire did not have a hint of joy on his face. However, although his life can be saved, the injury to his heart is too serious. Even if he recovers, he won't be able to do strenuous exercise in the future. In other words, he will become a normal person. The joy on Guo Jutao's face instantly froze. "This, Chief, are you joking?" Chief Ma Yongshire did not answer. However, Guo Jutao already knew the answer from his gloomy face. Guo Jutao was a little confused. He thought that the leader would return soon. He did not expect this to be the result. Ma Yongshire also sighed. "So, you have to take up the responsibility of the leader of the hunter group and reorganize the hunter group." Guo Jutao's face showed panic. Since the beginning of the hunter group, he had always been the leader's assistant. Later in the body hunters, he was also the deputy leader. Until now, he was the deputy leader. He had never been the leader. Now, the base chief suddenly asked him to be the leader. He could not do it at all. And he knew that he was a little sissy. Although he hated it when others said that about him, he knew in his heart that it was the truth. How could he be the leader? Who would be convinced by him? Chief Ma Yongshire's gaze slowly moved to Guo Jutao's face. Staring into his eyes, he said, "I believe that you can do it well. Moreover, this is an order." Guo Jutao hesitated for a moment and finally puffed out his chest. "Chief, I promise to complete the mission." Although he was still a little nervous, he also knew that in the current situation, it seemed that no one in the hunter group could take on this responsibility except him. Ma Yongshire nodded. Then he looked at Dr. Chen in the laboratory. "Dr. Chen, the mutated zombies and mutated beasts outside are getting stronger and stronger. Our hunter group suffered heavy losses at this time. If the zombies attack the city soon, I'm afraid we won't be able to resist at all. Although there is a mysterious strong man in charge, we can't rely on him forever. After all, a person like the mysterious strong man can't stay in the base forever. Therefore, I want you to restart Project X." Dr. Chen's expression changed slightly. "Project X? Chief, the mutated zombies created by Project X are indeed much stronger than the naturally mutated zombies outside the base. But the uncertainty is also much greater. The mutated zombies we created went out of control and killed more than a dozen researchers. Then they broke into the zombie farm. It almost caused a disaster. Even now, I still wake up from my dreams. I'm afraid it's not appropriate to restart Project X now." Ma Yongshire shook his head. "Last time, we underestimated the strength of the man-made mutated zombies. This time, we have a sample and a certain amount of data. We are fully prepared. If we combine it with the mutated zombie blood that Lun Yan brought, we might be able to create a stronger mutated zombie that will listen to our orders." Dr. Chen was nervous when he heard this crazy plan. But he was also slightly excited. Chapter 78. Ma Yongshire's so-called Project X was to create mutated zombies. In the past, Ma Yongshire had discovered that the zombies in the wilderness were getting stronger and stronger. He had already predicted that the zombies would attack the city in the future. With the few firearms that humans had, they would definitely not be able to resist. So he ordered the laboratory to try to artificially create mutated zombies. Then he would think of a way to tame these mutated zombies and let them be used by humans. If they succeeded, humans would have a great advantage in the battle against zombies in the future. The mutated zombies that they created were indeed very strong, dozens of times stronger than the mutated zombies in the wilderness. But they were extremely unstable and easy to lose control. This was why the mutated zombies escaped from the laboratory that year. Since then, Xianxia had put Project X on hold. Until now, powerful mutated zombies had appeared in the wilderness, and their hunting group had suffered heavy losses. So he wanted to restart Project X again. While Dr. Chen was nervous, he was also a little excited. It was her lifelong regret that she couldn't continue with Project X back then. Now, the leader had finally ordered to restart it. How could this not make her excited? After the leader of the base finished these two things, he seemed to have finally fulfilled his wish. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes tiredly. In the next few days, Mo Sure still signed in every day, raised pigs, and fed zombies. Different from the past, this time he did not hear anyone talking about the mysterious strong man. There were even many people who avoided the words, mysterious expert. Obviously, Mo Sure's ruthless methods that day made these people in awe. They no longer dared to casually talk about him. Mo Sure was also happy to be quiet. In the base, there were big news from time to time. The biggest news was that the leader of the base had resigned. It had been more than 20 years since the base was established. During this period, the leader had been leading the base. Whether it was his leadership ability or his sense of responsibility, there was nothing to say. Everyone was sincerely convinced by him. Never would they have thought that the leader would suddenly resign. In the yard, Mo Sure and Old Li finished feeding the pigs and zombies. The two were still chatting under the grape trellis. Recently, there have been more and more zombies sent to the zombie farm. It's a little too busy. Old Li sighed as he massaged his waist. Mo Sure nodded. There's a lot of demand in the lab, so our corpses are naturally busy. Old Li said, I'm old, and my legs aren't good. It's been a busy day, and I can't take it anymore. Happy is a girl, and she might not be able to handle such heavy work. Shouldn't the leader send more people over? Mo Sure nodded again. I think, since the leader is so understanding, he should know. Just as they were talking, footsteps sounded outside the door. Two people walked in from outside the door. One of them was a leader, and the other was the chief of the base, Xianxia. Old Li immediately stood up with a nervous and surprised expression on his face. The chief was a big shot. When had he ever come to a corpse farm? He had been in the base for more than 20 years, but he had never been so close to the chief. Chief, why are you here? Old Li felt a little uneasy. Xianxia seemed to have aged a lot in these few days. He smiled. Old Li, right? You can call me Old Ma. I'm no longer the chief. Old Li was an honest man. He naturally could not change the way he addressed Xianxia. Xianxia's expression was a little gloomy. I made a mistake, so I should be punished. I asked the new chief to punish me, but he refused no matter what. I had no choice, so I could only punish myself. I sent myself here. The smile on his face was obviously a little pale. Old Li's face was filled with disbelief. The chief of the base was a person who stood at the top of the base. And the corpse farm was a job that was looked down upon the most. The chief of the base actually came here to raise corpses? This was something he did not even dare to dream of in the past. The leader said to Old Li, All right, Old Li. We'll do whatever the chief says. In the future you have to take care of the chief. Otherwise, I won't forgive you. Old Li quickly nodded. Yes. Xianxia said, I told you, I'm a normal person now. Don't call me chief anymore. Then, he looked at Mo Sure and Happy and smiled. You must be young Mo and Happy. I'm a complete newbie now. I'll need you to take care of me. Happy was a little flustered. After all, no matter what, he was still the chief of the base. A person who stood high above others. Mo Sure was the only one who smiled generously. No problem. Over the next few days, Mo Sure and Happy brought Old Ma to familiarize himself with the work and the environment. Old Li still could not change the way he addressed Xianxia and kept calling him chief. Only Mo Sure called him Old Ma generously. This made Old Ma feel very comfortable. Due to Old Ma's arrival, the number of guests in the corpse farm also increased. However, Old Ma did not seem to be willing to meet people. Gradually, the number of people who came became fewer and fewer. The corpse farm returned to its former peace. A few days later, when Old Ma familiarized himself with the work, more than 20 zombies and 10 pigs were transferred to the corpse farm. These zombies and pigs would be under Old Ma's care in the future. Old Ma was quite nimble and diligent in his work. Moreover, he treated people warmly and did not have the air of a former chief. Therefore, he quickly gained the favor of the people in the corpse farm. However, this everyone did not include Mo Shi. He always felt that there was something fishy about this matter. As for what exactly was fishy, he could not tell. It was just a feeling. Mo Shi secretly guessed in his heart that Ma Xianxia had come for him. Could it be that he already knew that he was the mysterious powerhouse? However, the current Mo Shi did not care whether his identity was exposed or not. In front of his absolute strength, any schemes were just a joke. The reason why he did not take the initiative to expose himself was because he loved peace and was afraid of trouble. Every day, after finishing the work in the corpse farm, he had nothing else to do and was free. However, he was still a little curious about Ma Xianxia's goal. Therefore, in the next few days, after Mo Shi finished feeding the zombies and pigs, he seemed to be resting under the grape trellis. However, he had already sent out his psychic power to observe Old Ma's every move. Sure enough, as soon as he probed, he found out that something was wrong. These days, there was a great demand for zombies in the laboratory. The hunting group caught zombies from outside the base and brought them to the corpse farm. In a few days, these zombies would be taken away by the laboratory. As the saying goes, the corpse farm was made of iron and the zombies flowed like water. However, among the zombies raised by Ma Xianxia, there was one zombie that had been raised in the zombie room and had never been taken away. Moreover, every time Ma Xianxia went in to feed this zombie, he always stayed longer than in other corpse farms. There was even one time when Ma Xianxia's eyes were shining with tears when he faced this zombie. Mo Shi couldn't help but become curious. Chapter 79. Mo Shi used his telekinesis to detect that Ma Xianxia was actually crying to a zombie. A living person would shed tears for a zombie. Mo Shi was puzzled and carefully examined the zombie again. This was a female zombie. She was about 30 years old. Other than the obvious claw marks on her neck, there were no other injuries. And every time Ma Xianxia saw this female zombie, his eyes were filled with pain. After detecting this, and combining it with Ma Xianxia's behavior, Mo Shi suddenly realized something. A human being could have feelings for a zombie. There were only two possibilities. 1. This person was obsessed with corpses. This had happened in the base before. 2. This zombie was once this person's true love. Obviously, Ma Xianxia should be the latter. Combined with Ma Xianxia's age, Mo Shi guessed that this female zombie should have been his girlfriend or wife. More than 20 years had passed, and the appearance of zombies had not changed much. And Ma Xianxia was already old. Mo Shi guessed this and couldn't help but be moved. So that was it. Ma Xianxia was the real zombie keeper. After this woman became a zombie, he didn't abandon her. Instead, he kept her until now. He kept her for more than 20 years. One must know that when the base was first established, people hated zombies to the extreme. Zombies destroyed the whole world, destroyed their families, harmed their parents, children, and loved ones. They had long hated zombies to the bone. So a few years later, when the zombie farm was established, it was after countless discussions and tremendous pressure that the zombie farm was built. In that kind of environment, if someone raised a zombie privately, he would probably be beaten to death immediately. It was conceivable that Ma Xianxia wanted to raise a zombie without anyone knowing, and for more than 20 years. How difficult was it? It also showed how deep his love for this woman was. After discovering this, Mo Shi's heart had a little more respect for Ma Xianxia. However, that was all. When he saw Ma Xianxia again, Mo Shi acted as if he didn't know about this at all. This was Ma Xianxia's business. As long as it didn't affect his comfortable life, Mo Shi was too lazy to meddle in other people's business. In the blink of an eye, another 3 months had passed. Over the past 3 months, Mo Shi's psychokinesis finally showed signs of a breakthrough through the continuous injections of brain cell enhancers. At midnight that night, Mo Shi decided to sign in 10 bottles of the enhanced version of brain cell enhancer. He injected these enhancers into his body one by one. With the strength of his body now, it was naturally impossible for an ordinary syringe to penetrate his body. However, the syringes he received from the system were all made of special materials and were extremely sharp. On top of that, Mo Shi's telekinesis allowed him to detect the most minute details. It could find the most vulnerable part of the skin. Furthermore, his strength was far from what an ordinary person could compare to. That was why it could easily pierce through the skin. Soon, the 8th injection was completed. At this moment, he felt his head begin to heat up. His heart skipped a beat. I'm finally going to break through. He then put the remaining 2 syringes into his backpack. Then, he used his telekinesis to observe the medicinal power that had just entered his body. The medicinal effect flowed through his blood vessels and headed straight for his brain. In the brain, it spread along the capillaries. Along with the spread of the medicinal effect, his telekinesis also spread out instantly. His telekinesis covered a radius of 900 meters. However, as the medicinal effect took effect, the range of his telekinesis rapidly expanded. 910 meters, 930 meters, 991 meters, 1,000 meters. Within a radius of 1,000 meters, any movement in the wind or grass could be seen. He could easily detect 2 mosquitoes flirting with each other in the warehouse 1,000 meters away. At the same time, as long as it was less than 100 kilograms, he could lift it. In other words, with his current telekinesis, he could casually lift a person. Of course, the increase in the power of telekinesis was only secondary. The most important thing was that after his telekinesis reached level 10, his use of telekinesis would become more skillful and natural. In the past, when he was level 8, he could use his telekinesis to multitask. Now that he had become a level 10 telekinesis master, his telekinesis was able to do 3 things at once. Moreover, after his telekinesis reached level 10, the most terrifying thing was that his combat strength had greatly increased. He could feel that with his current telekinesis, even if he were to face a level 10 strong mutated zombie, he could easily blow up their heads with just a thought. This made Mo Shi slightly excited. Then, he picked up the 9th brain cell enhancer and injected it into his body. He had a hunch that level 10 of psychokinesis was not the end. He still had a long way to go to be invincible in the world. However, this time, when the medicinal effect entered his body and rushed into his brain, it did not act on his brain cells. Instead, after circulating in his body, it was discharged through his sweat pores. Mo Shi smiled bitterly. It seemed that his telekinesis had been raised to the limit. If he wanted to raise it further, it was not something that could be done by the medicinal effect. He had to find the right opportunity. However, this matter could not be rushed. Fortunately, now that his telekinesis had increased, he could detect the changes in the medicinal effect when it entered his body. It would not be like when he reached the limit of a zombie hunter and wasted a lot of enhancers. Next, it was time to increase his physical strength. At midnight the next day, Mo Shi signed in and received 10 Titan Dragon Gene enhancers. They were injected into his body. He estimated that he would be able to break through in 3 months at most. At that time, his hunter psychokinesis would reach the peak of level 10 at the same time. Thinking about it, he was really looking forward to it. However, on this day, another uninvited guest appeared in the base. It was a man and a woman. The man was a hunter. The woman was a psychokinesis. What was even more surprising was that they were actually flying a helicopter over. One had to know that monsters were everywhere outside the base. Naturally, no one was mining oil. Things like helicopters, which consumed a lot of fuel, could not fly anymore. The people of Base C1 had not seen a helicopter fly for more than 10 years. Now that these 2 people were driving a helicopter, it was surprising. However, the people of the base were only surprised. They treated these 2 people extremely coldly. After the incident with Lu Wang and Lu Nian, they were quite repulsed by outsiders. Therefore, as soon as the helicopter landed, they took control of the man and woman. After the interrogation of the new chief of the base, they learned that the man and woman were from Base C2. Their Base C2 happened to be built near an oil field. It took them nearly 5 years to recover the oil field. And this time, they came out to contact the other bases. The mutated beasts and mutated zombies were getting stronger and stronger, and humans seemed to be facing a real extinction. Therefore, they were ordered by the chief of the base to contact the other bases to find a solution. In the zombie farm, when Doomsday heard Old Lee say that these two people were from Base C2, he could not help but be moved. Base C2 was only 100 kilometers away from the draconic ruins. Chapter 80. According to the map that Mo Sure had obtained, there were many people in the area. The location of the dragon ruins was more than 100 kilometers away from Base C2. Mo Sure was not very strong before, so he did not go there. But now that his telekinesis had reached level 10, he was almost invincible in the wilderness. And he had a trump card like the dragon Shadow Step. If he encountered danger, he could escape if he could not win. He was a little tempted. When the two of them left, should he leave with them? However, before they could leave, strange things happened in the base. On this day, Mo Sure was feeding zombies in the base. Suddenly, he heard a soft sound coming from afar. Puff! If it was an ordinary person, it would be impossible to hear it from so far away. Even hunters could not do it. But Mo Sure, as a psychokinesis, caught this soft sound. However, he did not care. But half a day later, there was news. The captain of the hunting group 1, Little Bean, was assassinated. Although it did not hit the vital parts, Little Bean's life was saved. But this matter attracted the attention of the entire Base C1. After all, attacking a member of the hunting group had never happened before. The members of the hunting group were all very strong, and their duty was to protect the safety of the entire base. Therefore, most people were very respectful to the members of the hunting group and would not harm them. Even if the members of the hunting group had conflicts, they would not be stupid enough to shoot in the base. They could easily find a place outside the base to harm the other party, and it would not easily arouse suspicion. So who was it? Why did they do this? Many people pointed the finger of suspicion at the two people from Base C2. However, the two of them had alibis. The new chief of the base ordered the body hunters to investigate this matter thoroughly. However, no one would have thought. This was just the beginning. 3 days later, it was lunchtime. Suddenly, a roar came from the direction of the laboratory. Roar, roar. Then an ear-piercing alarm sounded. Beep, beep, beep. Then, there were screams in the laboratory. Boom. Another loud sound came. Mo Sure used his telekinesis to check. He found that the door of the laboratory, which was used to resist rockets, was directly blown out. Then, a huge guy with a height of 3 meters jumped out. This guy did not have an upper lip, so his sharp teeth were exposed. It looked extremely ugly. On his shoulders, there were several bone spurs as thick as fingers. His entire right arm had transformed into a 2-meter-long sharp blade. His left arm transformed into a 3-meter-long axe. When Mo Sure's telekinesis probed this guy, he was speechless. Those fellows in the laboratory didn't learn from their mistakes. He had created such a monster again. However, this time, Mo Sure did not intend to make a move. With the strength of the body hunters, it shouldn't be difficult to deal with this mutant zombie. The mutated zombie wreaked havoc at the entrance of the laboratory. The corpse hunting team rushed over after hearing the news and hurriedly used their guns and rockets to force it back into the laboratory. But he didn't expect it to backfire. This mutated zombie, after being bombarded by the artillery, actually turned around and rushed straight to the corpse farm. Mo Sure shook his head helplessly. He wondered if he had gone back in time to 6 or 7 years ago. In the other rooms of the corpse farm, Old Lee, Happy, and the former chief Ma Xianxia were all nervously hiding in their own rooms. But different from Old Lee and Ma Xianxia, Happy even looked at Mo Sure's room through the crack in the window from time to time. Would Brother Mo make a move? If a monster rushed in, would she be able to see Brother Mo make a move for the first time? However, it was obvious that she was going to be disappointed. When the mutated zombie jumped 5 meters and was about to jump in from the wall of the corpse farm. Bang! There was a loud noise. A foot kicked the head of the mutated zombie. The mutated zombie was immediately sent flying. The person who came was a hunter from the body hunters. With him, it was easy to deal with the mutated zombie. Happy couldn't help but feel slightly disappointed. Fortunately, it didn't cause much damage. However, after this incident, many people began to feel nervous. More people pointed their fingers at the man and woman in base C2. When Mo Sure and Happy went to the cafeteria to eat, they heard the discussion. Before those two people came, everything in the base was fine. A few days after they arrived, Captain Little Bean was attacked, and the murderer hasn't been found yet. Now the mutated zombie is out again. It must be them. If it's not them, who else could it be? In my opinion, they should be sentenced to death. Or at the very least, they should be chased out of the base. Another person said. The lab didn't learn from their mistakes. 6 or 7 years ago, the mutated zombie killed so many people. They actually dared to study mutated zombies. They were just following orders. I heard that the research this time was ordered by the former chief. He said that he wanted to study mutated zombies that could be commanded to increase the overall strength of the base. Oh, if that's the case, then there's no problem. Because of the previous incident, Chief Ma took the blame and resigned. He even sent himself to the corpse farm. There's nothing to say about this kind of person. I'm just worried that this will create stronger monsters and destroy the entire base. Sigh, there's nothing we can do about it. The zombies outside are getting stronger and stronger. If we don't do this, the base will still be destroyed. It's just a matter of time. I think Chief Ma did the right thing. When Mo Sure heard this, he felt that it was a little strange. As for what was strange, he couldn't figure it out. Since he couldn't figure it out, he was too lazy to think about it. In short, it was fine as long as it wasn't directed at him. Even if it was directed at him, with his strength, the other party would just be digging their own graves. After the mutated zombie incident, the man and woman from base C2 were directly quarantined for 3 days. After the body hunters investigated and confirmed that it wasn't them who did it, they were released. If it was an ordinary person, they would have left immediately after receiving this kind of treatment. But this man and woman were very abnormal. Not only did they not leave immediately, but they also strolled around the base. They seemed to be very interested in the laboratory and the corpse farm. Even if they were pointed at by passers-by, they still acted as if nothing happened. Of course, they couldn't enter the laboratory. They walked around the laboratory a few times. Then they came to the corpse farm. After Mo Sure finished feeding the zombies, he was basking in the sun with Old Lee and Old Ma in the yard and chatting. Happy was mending a camouflage uniform that Mo Sure had punctured. In this apocalyptic world, resources were scarce. Of course, cloth was also very scarce. People's clothes were usually mended over and over again until they couldn't be mended anymore. Then, they would change into a slightly newer set of old clothes. When they heard the sound of footsteps, they looked up. They saw the man and woman walking in. The man was in his 30s and had a scar at the corner of his eye. The woman was also in her 30s and was wearing a tight leather jacket. She looked valiant and heroic, but also sexy. Old Lee, who had always been honest, couldn't help but frown when he saw these two people. Although he wasn't sure if these two people had anything to do with the two incidents, it was true that after these two people arrived, strange things began to happen. Happy subconsciously moved closer to Mo Sure. The former chief, Old Ma, was very enthusiastic. You're here. Take a seat. I'll get you some water. The man glanced at the 4 people. When he saw Happy, his eyes couldn't help but light up. Chapter 81. When the young man saw Happy, his eyes instantly lit up. It was as if he was a child who had discovered a new toy. Although his gaze only flashed for a moment, Mo Sure's mental power was far superior to that of a normal person, so he still caught it. He furrowed his brows slightly. Although Mo Sure had not confirmed his relationship with Happy yet, he would never allow anyone else to think about Happy. The young man acted as if he was familiar with them. He extended his hand and was about to shake hands with everyone. While shaking hands with Old Lee, he said, "Uncle, I'm Hao Ren, a level 5 hunter from base C2. Nice to meet you." Then, he shook hands with Old Ma, who had just brought water over. Then, he extended his hand to Mo Sure. Mo Sure acted as if he did not see it. He turned his head, picked up the cup, and drank the water by himself. Hao Ren did not feel awkward. He turned to Happy. His eyes lit up, and he extended his hand. Happy hesitated for a moment, then imitated Mo Shi. He turned 90 degrees and continued to mend his clothes. Mo Shi was a little surprised. Happy, you've learned bad things. Hao Ren was rejected by Happy, and there was a hint of regret in his eyes. The woman beside him glared at Hao Ren. Hao Ren acted as if he did not notice it. He continued to point at the woman in leather and introduced her to everyone. This is my colleague, Xianxia. The beautiful Xianxia smiled politely at everyone. However, when she glanced at Happy, a hint of surprise and jealousy flashed in her eyes. She thought that she was already very beautiful, but she did not expect this girl to be even more beautiful than her. No wonder that scumbag Hao Ren's eyes widened when he saw this girl. When she thought of this, she glared at Hao Ren again. Hao Ren acted as if he did not notice it. He laughed and said, Base C2 doesn't have a laboratory or a corpse farm. We're here today because we want to visit and learn. When we return to the base, we'll suggest to the leader that we should build a laboratory and a corpse farm as well. That's why all of you are my masters. Seniors, please take care of me. Mo Shi didn't respond to him. Naturally, Happy ignored him. Old Li only snorted. Only Old Ma said with a smile. I see. Welcome. Welcome. Now that all humans share a common destiny, our bases should communicate more and learn from each other's strengths. Then he turned to Mo Shi and said, Mo Shi, Happy, the zombies you raise are the best. You can show them around. Mo Shi yawned and said, I'm tired. As he spoke, he stood up and slowly walked out of the courtyard. Happy picked up the clothes by his side and lifted them. She indicated that she was mending her clothes and had no time. Although she couldn't speak, she wasn't a fool. Just now, the way this Hao Ren looked at her was a little strange. That guy was not a good person at all. Even though she felt that she wasn't good enough for Brother Mo, however, she didn't want Brother Mo to misunderstand. Seeing this, Old Ma shook his head helplessly. He said to Mo Shi and Happy, If you're busy, give me the key. I'll show them around. Mo Shi's voice came from the entrance of the courtyard. It's in my room. Happy knows where it is. Happy immediately got up and entered Mo Shi's room. He took out a string of keys to the zombie cultivation room. Then, he handed the keys to her row of zombie cultivation rooms to Old Ma. Then, he took the clothes he was mending and entered the room. Old Ma smiled wryly and sighed. Young people. Hao Ren didn't care at all. He glanced at Happy's door. He said, Actually, we can all understand. After we came to the base, strange things kept happening. If it were us, we would also be suspicious. We have already been treated as enemies by all the people in base C1. So, we will try our best to learn your advanced experience over the next 2 days. We plan to leave the day after tomorrow. Old Ma didn't say anything else. He brought the two of them to carefully visit Mo Shi and Happy's row of zombie cultivation rooms. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the man and woman left the zombie farm. When they were about to leave, Hao Ren still looked at Happy's room reluctantly. He said loudly, Then we'll take our leave. The woman called Xianxia also keenly noticed this. She also glanced at Happy's room. A hint of coldness flashed in her eyes. They were 1,000 meters away from the zombie farm. Xianxia let out a cold snort. Humph! You can't walk when you see a beautiful woman. Hao Ren giggled and said, Beauty is beautiful. Everyone has a love for beauty, isn't it? Besides, I'm lustful but not lustful. It doesn't matter if I just take a look. Xianxia snorted coldly again. Am I not enough for you to look at? Hao Ren giggled again. Of course you're beautiful. It's just that if you look at the same kind of beauty for a long time, it's inevitable that you'll get tired. Look at someone else and relieve your fatigue. At that time when I look back at you, I'll find you even more beautiful. Xianxia glared at Hao Ren. Shameless. Then she said coldly, If you dare to look at this woman again in the future, I'll kill her. Hao Ren's forehead immediately broke out in a cold sweat. He quickly begged for mercy. I say, Sister Zhen, please don't cause trouble again. We're about to leave. If you really cause trouble again, will you still be able to leave? Xianxia sneered. This crappy base doesn't even have a single psychokinesis. If I want to leave, will they be able to stop me? Hao Ren nodded repeatedly. You're a level 4 psychokinesis. I'm a level 5 hunter. If we really want to leave, no one in this base can stop us. But let's try not to cause trouble. We're here for peace, okay? The woman said coldly. For peace? I think you're here to hook up with a woman. We're leaving tomorrow. How Ren was stunned. Didn't we say the day after tomorrow? Xianxia glanced in the direction of the zombie farm. The day after tomorrow? You still want to hook up with that vixen? I'll kill her tonight. How Ren's forehead broke out in cold sweat again. Fine, fine, fine. Tomorrow it is. You're good, you're the boss. I'm begging you. Please don't cause any more trouble. Xianxia rolled her eyes at How Ren and said, You should say that to yourself. After saying that, she held her head high and strode away. How Ren, on the other hand, was like an obedient dog, obediently following behind. The next morning, Wuxia woke up early as usual. Although life in the zombie farm was leisurely and he could sleep in. But after becoming a hunter and psychokinesis, he was full of energy. Although he always went to bed after midnight, he was already awake at 6 in the morning. He first fed the pigs, then took the pork from the slaughterhouse. He went to his row of zombie farms and fed them one by one. Happy also woke up at this time. She saw Wuxia and smiled sweetly. Wuxia instantly felt that the whole world was bright. Then, Happy also took the meat and began to feed the zombies. After a while, Wuxia opened the door of a zombie farm. But suddenly, he heard a few clanking sounds from Happy's side. It was clearly the sound of a plate falling to the ground. The next moment, the sound of hurried footsteps could be heard. Happy ran out of the zombie farm in a panic. Behind her was a zombie with a mouth full of blood. It roared like a beast and chased after Happy. Chapter 82. Happy ran out of her corpse reclamation room in a panic. The grape leaves under her feet also flew up. Her right hand was already dripping with blood. Blood spilled on the fallen leaves in the yard, and the fallen leaves instantly looked like blood-red butterflies. They danced behind her. Behind her, a zombie with a mouth full of blood chased after her like a beast. It let out a bone-chilling roar. It chased after Happy. Happy was extremely flustered. She saw Wuxia come out of the room. She did not run towards Wuxia, but away from Wuxia. When Wuxia saw this, his face immediately darkened. He took a step forward and instantly covered 50 meters. When he arrived in front of Happy, he pulled him over and placed him behind him. Then he was about to attack. But at that moment, the door of the room beside the aisle suddenly opened. A shadow jumped out from inside. The crowbar in the person's hand hit the zombie's head with a whine. Bang! Blood gushed out of the zombie's head, and it immediately fell to the ground. But the person used too much force and did not stop. After the crowbar hit the zombie, it bounced towards Wuxia. Wuxia hugged Happy and gently turned his body. He avoided the crowbar. He looked up. The person was Old Ma. Old Ma's expression was solemn. He asked Wuxia, Are you okay? Wuxia shook his head. Old Ma saw the blood on Happy's right hand, and his expression suddenly froze. Happy was bitten. Wuxia's expression was gloomy. Don't worry. At that moment, Old Li also heard the commotion and rushed over. When he saw Happy was bitten, pain immediately appeared in his eyes. Happy. Happy's eyes were filled with extreme sadness. It was not because of the physical pain. It was because of the sadness in her heart. She was going to become a zombie. At that time, she would never know Brother Mo again. In pain, she wanted to push Wuxia away. She was going to become a zombie, and she could not drag Brother Mo down. However, Wuxia's arm was so strong. She could not push him away at all. Wuxia hugged Happy tightly and comforted her softly by her ear. Don't worry, you won't turn into a zombie, trust me. He had once asked Happy and Old Li to inject the antibodies against Virus X. But even so, when he saw the blood on Happy's right hand, his heart still ached. It was a heart-wrenching pain, as if someone was gripping his heart tightly. He didn't even feel this much pain when his leg was bitten off by a zombie. This was the first time in his life that he felt this way. He carefully held Happy's hand and wrapped his arm around her shoulders. Go to my house. I have medicine. Old Ma hurriedly pulled Emo aside and said, "Xiao, she's about to turn into a zombie. Let her go." Happy also wanted to break free, but Emo held her so tightly. It was as if he was never willing to let go of her again. At the same time, Emo shook off Old Ma's hand and said in a low voice, "It's impossible for her to become a zombie. Even if she becomes a zombie, I will still raise her." As he spoke, he happily strode back to his house. Old Li quickly called out from behind, Xiao, let her go. I know, I don't want her to turn into a zombie, but she's about to change. I can't lose my son after losing my daughter." Old Li was so anxious that he sounded like he was about to cry. He wanted to catch up to Emo and Happy, but with his legs, he couldn't catch up at all. In a hurry he shouted to Old Ma, "Old Ma, quickly pull him back, quick!" However, Old Ma didn't react. He turned to look at Old Ma and saw that Old Ma's expression was dull. Old Li frowned. Why was Old Ma in a daze at this time? He couldn't care less and limped toward Emo. However, Emo slammed the door shut with a clang. Old Li was so anxious that he was sweating. He kept knocking on the door outside, but there was no response. He called Old Ma for help again. Old Ma wasn't as dull as before, but his reaction seemed to be much slower. Old Li was so anxious that he wanted to cry. "What's going on?" "I, Old Li, am about to be buried in the ground, but I have to send my child away?" At this time, Old Ma was shocked by Emo words just now. "Even if she becomes a zombie, I will still raise her." Isn't this talking about me, Old Ma? Could it be that Emo knows that I raise zombies? If others knew that he raised zombies, he wouldn't care if his reputation was ruined. But would those people take his wife away from him? How can that be? I can't let that happen. It seems that I have to have a good talk with Xiao in the future. At this time in Emo's room, he pulled out a box beside the bed and took out a bottle of recovery medicine. He had checked in too many times, and his space was almost full with other things. There was only one bottle of recovery medicine left in the space, and it was used by him a few days ago. Fortunately, he remembered that when he tidied up the space, he took out some unimportant things and stuffed them all over the room. This bottle of recovery medicine was one of them. He opened the bottle cap, handed the bottle of recovery medicine to Happy, and said softly, "Drink it." Happy was very obedient and nodded. She opened her mouth and drank it. Soon, the flesh on the wound was squirming quickly. It recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. Happy's beautiful eyes widened as she looked at her right hand in disbelief. In just 5 minutes, her right hand was as good as new. Apart from the large amount of blood on her fingers, it was impossible to tell that she had been injured before. Emo held Happy's right hand tightly and said softly, "Happy, does it still hurt?" Happy quickly shook her head. Emo said again, "Don't worry, the medicine I injected you with before is an antibody to the virus. You won't become a zombie." When Happy heard this, the last trace of worry on her face disappeared. She smiled happily. At this time, she already understood that Brother Emo was really a mysterious powerhouse. Otherwise, who else could take out an antibody to the virus? The laboratory hadn't figured it out yet. Moreover, no one else could heal such a big wound in just 5 minutes. In addition, Brother Emo seemed to have crossed half of the yard in the blink of an eye to come to her side. Apart from the mysterious powerhouse, perhaps even those hunters couldn't be so fast. Emo remembered that Happy had clearly seen him just now, but she didn't run to him. Instead, she ran far away. He couldn't help but feel pain in his heart again. He also knew that Happy might have already guessed that he was the mysterious powerhouse. But she was just guessing and didn't dare to be 100% sure. In that kind of situation just now, before she was 100% sure that he was the mysterious powerhouse, Happy would definitely not lead the zombies to his side. When he thought of this, he couldn't help but feel touched. He rubbed Happy's head and messed up her hair. Silly girl. Happy, on the other hand, cried. Happy tears. She just heard Brother Emo say that even if she became a zombie, he would still take care of her. When she thought of this, she held Emo's hand tightly. However, Emo's heart turned cold at this moment. How could the zombies in Happy's zombie room suddenly break free from the chains? If it was an accident, it would be fine. But if it was man-made, Then they would have to bear the brunt of a level 10 psychokinesis. Chapter 83. 83. Murderer. After Happy took the recovery potion, his body recovered in a short 5 minutes. However, Mo Sure felt that there was something fishy about this. It was definitely not an accident. Outside the door, Old Lee was still knocking on the door. Mo Sure opened the door and said, "Happy is fine." Old Lee and Old Ma quickly looked over. They saw that not only did Happy not turn into a zombie, but the wound on his hand had also completely disappeared. Both of them were very surprised. Mo Sure looked at Old Ma and said, "There's something fishy about this." Old Ma nodded. Of course there was something fishy. However, he felt that Mo Sure was even more fishy. Happy was clearly bitten by a zombie, but he was brought into the room by Mo Sure. Not only did he not turn into a zombie, but the terrifying wound on the back of his hand had also completely disappeared. Was there anything more fishy than this? However, he was after all a general and someone who had been the chief of a base. With just a thought, he had already guessed most of it. He did not say anything. Everyone had their secrets. Since it was very likely that Mo Sure had already discovered his secret but had not made it public, then he naturally would not reveal Mo Sure's secret. He said to Old Lee beside him, "Call a few people over to deal with the corpse. Don't mention Happy's injury for now." Although Old Lee was an honest man, he was not a fool. Besides, he treated Mo Sure and Happy as his children. He knew that this matter could not be mentioned at this time. He immediately nodded. "I know." Then he walked out. Mo Sure went to the morgue where the accident happened. He covered the entire room and the surroundings with his psychic power to investigate carefully. Soon, he found a clue. He saw that the end of the chain had a small opening. At first glance, this should be the chain that had been used for a long time. It had been worn very thin, which was why the zombie had used brute force to break free. However, Mo Sure knew that Happy was very careful. As long as he found that more than half of the chain was worn out, he would find someone to replace it with a new chain. Although this chain was not new, it was not worn out much. Furthermore, the age of the last ring was slightly different from that of the other rings. Normal people might not be able to notice this difference. However, Mo Sure had level 10 telekinesis. This small difference that was difficult to detect was as obvious as under a microscope in his eyes. On the surface, this chain looked no different from the other chains. But in fact, it had long been rusted beyond recognition. It was just that its surface had been treated so that it didn't look too old. It was obvious that someone had changed the chain in advance. In Mo Sure's heart, anger suddenly rose. It was man-made. Someone wanted to kill Happy. Perhaps it was not his weakness. Instead, it was directed at him. Mo Sure's expression was incomparably gloomy. His eyes were filled with killing intent. His immense telekinesis instantly spread out. It covered a radius of 1,000 meters. Within 1,000 meters, everything could be as big as the overall layout of each building or as small as a fingerprint left behind by someone. Everything entered his mind. After reaching level 10, his telekinesis was already able to detect minute details. Fingerprints that were hard to see with the human eye were as obvious as a searchlight to him. Old Ma also came over at this time and asked, "What did you find?" Mo Sure shook his head. From the investigation of his telekinesis, he had not found anyone suspicious so far. Before finding the murderer, he did not want to tell anyone. At the same time, the people of the corpse hunting team also arrived. Now that there was a hunting group, the function of the corpse hunting team had been changed from hunting corpses to dealing with some chores. Their function was similar to the police before the apocalypse. The person of the corpse hunting team asked, "Is anyone injured?" Old Lee glanced at Happy, lowered his head and answered, "No." The corpse hunters heaved a sigh of relief. Old Lee said again, "We all feel that something is not right about this matter." The captain of the corpse hunting team joked, "Why? Could it be that someone wants to harm a corpse keeper?" Old Ma's expression was solemn as he said, "Happy is a very careful girl. It's impossible that the chain is so badly worn and she didn't notice it. There must be something fishy about this matter. Please investigate carefully." When the captain of the corpse hunting team heard the previous chief say so, he immediately took it seriously. He asked the team members to investigate the scene carefully. In the end, they found that there was something wrong with the chain. Have there been any suspicious people coming to the corpse farm recently? Or has anyone come to the corpse farm? Old Ma thought about it and answered, suspicious people. No one else. Oh, by the way, the 2 people from Base C2 came yesterday. The members of the corpse hunting team looked at each other, and they seemed to have understood something. Old Li also reacted. That's right, it must be them. Why did they come to our corpse farm for no reason? And ever since they came to our base has not been peaceful. First, Little Bean was attacked. Then, the mutated zombie ran out of the lab. Now, the zombies in the corpse farm mysteriously ran out. They must be the ones who did it. When Happy heard this, she seemed to have thought of something. She gestured with sign language. Old Li translated. She said that when they came yesterday, she noticed that the man's gaze was malicious. When the woman looked at her, she seemed to be a little angry. Those 2 bastards. Of course, the last sentence was Old Li's own words. When Old Ma heard this, he pondered for a moment. He analyzed. I noticed what Happy said at that time as well. That woman called Xianxia was not angry, but she has always been a jealous woman. The corpse hunters nodded in agreement. Jealous women were the scariest. The captain said, for now, the 2 people from Base C2 are the most suspicious. And one of them is a hunter, and the other is a psychokinesis. It's easy for them to do all this. As for their motive, it's very likely that they want to destroy Base C1 so that they can obtain our resources. Of course, this is just a preliminary guess. We still need to investigate further. In any case, let's take those 2 people into custody first. When Mo Shi heard this, anger surged in his heart. Killing intent burst out of his eyes. The captain of the corpse hunters led his men and quickly went to the 2 people's residence. At the same time, he had someone inform the body hunters. One of them was a hunter, and the other was a psychokinesis. If they really wanted to resist, the corpse hunters would not be able to handle them. At this time, the 2 people were already packing up and planning to leave by helicopter. The captain of the corpse hunters gritted his teeth and blocked the 2 people's path. Both of you, a case happened at the corpse farm today, and you 2 are the most suspicious. So, I can't let you leave. Xianxia, who was dressed in leather, was instantly angry when she heard this. Humph, you were the one who chased us away, and now we want to leave. You are the one who is stopping us. Do you people from Base C1 really think that a level 4 psychokinesis is easy to deal with? The corpse hunters knew that a level 4 psychokinesis was not to be trifled with. But at this time, they could only brace themselves. In short, when this matter is investigated clearly and there are no problems, you can leave. The woman stood upright and sneered. If we want to leave, who can stop us? As she spoke, she used her telekinesis. Thump, thump, thump. All the corpse hunters at the scene knelt on the ground. These corpse hunters still wanted to resist. But Hao Ren had already attacked. Bang 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 bang. 5 kicks in a row. The 5 corpse hunters were all sent flying more than 20 meters away. After landing, they rolled for another 5 or 6 meters before coming to a stop. They all vomited blood and coughed repeatedly. Chapter 84. 84 They're not the murderers? The man and woman had defeated the 5 members of the body hunters. Xianxia snorted disdainfully and walked toward the helicopter. Hao Ren shrugged and said with a pained expression, "That's right. I wanted to get along with you as an ordinary person, but I didn't expect to be alienated in return." With that, he strode toward the helicopter. However, at this moment, a few of the body hunters who lived nearby had rushed over. One of them even aimed a rocket launcher at the helicopter. Xianxia frowned when she saw this. "You're courting death." As she spoke, she unzipped her leather jacket. 48 flying daggers suddenly floated out from the leather jacket. They flew toward the body hunter who was holding the rocket launcher. Puff, 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 puff. In almost an instant, the arms of the body hunter with the rocket launcher were dripping with blood. The other body hunters wanted to attack. However, the 48 flying daggers kept shuttling back and forth on their bodies. Puff, 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 puff. The sound of the sharp daggers piercing into flesh was heard. Moreover, this woman did not kill these body hunters directly. Instead, She let the 48 flying daggers cut through their limbs and bodies, making them suffer the pain of their bodies being cut. At this moment, a shadow in the distance flew toward them at an extremely fast speed. Whoosh! In almost 2 seconds, it had arrived in front of them. How Ren snorted when he saw this. He threw a punch at the shadow. Bang! That shadow was instantly blown apart by the explosion. A cloud of dark green smoke suddenly spread out in all directions. Oh no, we've been tricked. How Ren quickly covered his nose. Xianxia also held her breath. However, it was too late. Although the two of them had only inhaled one breath. However, their consciousness was gradually becoming blurry. It turned out that after the incident with the body hunters last time, the laboratory had set up a special project to develop a weapon to deal with hunters and psychokinesis. In the end, they developed this high-strength anesthetic bomb. As long as the anesthetic bomb exploded, hunters and psychokinesis inhaled the high-strength anesthetic inside the bomb would be anesthetized in just 10 seconds. Xianxia fell to the ground in just 2 seconds. How Ren held on for 10 seconds, but in the end, he couldn't hold on. He cursed, "It's hard to be a good person." He fell to the ground. After a moment, he lost consciousness. It was not until then that the 2 hunters of the body hunters appeared. They took these 2 people. That afternoon, almost everyone knew about this. Everyone in the entire base was burning with anger. They spontaneously came to the detention room where the 2 men were being held and cursed and roared. These 2 fellows are definitely up to no good. Since they've been here, It's this the gods' loss. They hurt the hunters and used throwing knives to cut the hunters' hands and feet instead of giving them a quick death. They're animals. He's just like Lu Nian and Lu Wang. Kill them. No, they're so cruel. They should be burned to death. Burn them. Burn them. Because of Lu Wang and Lu Nian, the people of Base C1 didn't trust outsiders very much. Now, the actions of these 2 people had finally ignited everyone's anger. In the end, it was Guo Jutao, the leader of the body hunters, who came. He persuaded everyone. Everyone they've done such a thing. Everyone wants to kill them. I'm no exception. But there's a procedure for everything. This matter needs to be further interrogated to determine their guilt. Only then can they be punished. So everyone should go back first. When there's a result here, I'll inform everyone immediately. At first, everyone still didn't agree. But they still respected the leader of the body hunters. In the end, after more than 10 minutes of persuasion by Guo Jutao, everyone left. At this time, Mo Shi was walking step by step toward the detention center. No one knew how much anger Mo Shi needed to vent at this time. When he was only 1,000 meters away from the detention center, he had already spread out his telekinesis. He could clearly detect that Guo Jutao was personally interrogating the 2 people in the detention center. How Ren was really panicking at this time. He thought that with their strength, they could do whatever they wanted in this base. But he didn't expect that they would be easily subdued by a strong anesthetic bomb. This base C1 could actually develop such a thing. It seemed that the base still needed a laboratory. As for Xianxia, although she wasn't as panicked as Hao Ren, there was a trace of regret and panic in her eyes. Guo Jutao entered the detention center and looked at the 2 people who were tied up like dumplings. He said coldly, "Speak." Hao Ren shook his head repeatedly. "Leader, I can swear to God that we didn't do it." "Absolutely not." Guo Jutao snorted and said to the people outside, "Send this guy to the zombie farm to feed the zombies." Immediately, someone came in and dragged Hao Ren out. Outside the door, Hao Ren made a squeal like a pig being slaughtered. "What I said is true, leader." Guo Jutao didn't care at all. He looked at Xianxia and said, "It's your turn." Xianxia's face turned pale. At this time, she no longer had the arrogance from before. She said with a trembling voice, "It's not us, we didn't do anything." "Humph. You didn't do anything?" Attacking a captain, mutated zombies escaped from the laboratory. Zombies in the zombie farm broke free from the chains. Since you came, strange things have happened one after another. You're telling me it has nothing to do with you? The woman in leather shook her head repeatedly. "It's really not us." Guo Jutao nodded. "Well, then I'll ask another question. You can't deny that you used a flying knife to hurt those zombie hunters. And you didn't kill them directly, but tortured them cruelly with a flying knife. What can't a person like you do? The woman in leather shook her head again. I didn't torture them. I just wanted to scare them away. Otherwise, they would have been killed long ago. Guo Jutao obviously didn't believe this. He nodded. Well, you still don't want to tell the truth? You'll be fed to the zombies later. About a kilometer away from the detention room, Mo Shi, whose heart was burning with rage, suddenly stopped in his tracks. After his telekinesis reached level 10, he could detect slight changes in people's brainwaves. When people lie, the frequency of their brainwaves will be slightly faster than when they tell the truth. When the man and woman were being interrogated just now, their brainwave frequency did not change at all from the usual while they were speaking. This was enough to show that what the two said was true. All the previous signs pointed to the two of them as the culprits. But now he suddenly found that these two people weren't the murderers. Mo Shi frowned. If it wasn't them, then who? If it wasn't them, who else could it be? Could it be that the clues were cut off here? Chapter 85. If these two people were not the murderer, then who could it be? Mo Shi frowned. He had been living a carefree life before. He rarely used his brain. At most, he would think about where to check in and how to get evolution points. When did he solve a case? But after a while, he thought of someone. From the looks of it, Xiao Dou was attacked, the mutated zombie escaped from the laboratory, and the zombie chain in the zombie farm was changed. These three things were very likely to be related. Then Xiao Dou was the key person. Thinking of this, he immediately strode to the hospital. Xiao Dou's injuries were more serious. Although a week had passed, he was still in the intensive care unit. Mo Shi came to Xiao Dou's ward. The intensive care unit was not a place that anyone could enter. He told the nurse that Xiao Dou was once his colleague. The nurse hesitated for a moment and asked the doctor. Finally, she entered the ward and asked Xiao Dou. Then she walked out and whispered to Mo Shi. Don't let the patient speak. You only have 5 minutes. Mo Shi nodded and entered the intensive care unit. In the intensive care unit, a strong smell of medicine assailed his nose. The room was very quiet. Only the sound of the ECG monitor could be heard. Beep, beep. It was like a countdown to life. Mo Shi came to the bedside and saw that Xiao Dou's eyes were tightly shut. He seemed to be in pain. He paused for a moment and said, Xiao Dou. When Xiao Dou heard this, his eyelids trembled a few times and he opened his eyes. His eyes flickered and he seemed to be a little excited. He opened his mouth with difficulty. I have been waiting for you. When he spoke, it was as if there was something stuck in his throat. It was uncomfortable to hear. Mo Shi nodded. Go ahead. Xiao Dou opened his mouth again with difficulty. The person who injured me was not planning to attack me. He was planning to attack you. Mo Shi heard this and his eyes flickered. He looked at Xiao Dou. This meant that Xiao Dou took a bullet for him. He had always thought that Xiao Dou was selfish and only cared about himself. He did not expect that he would take a bullet for him. Xiao Dou's throat made a noise. He panted for a moment before continuing. I may be selfish in small matters, but you are the guardian of the base. The base cannot live without you. Mo Shi looked at Xiao Dou, his heart stirring slightly. You saw the murderer? Little Bean gasped for breath with difficulty and said. His face was covered, but I am very sensitive to a person's body shape. As long as I see his figure, I will be able to recognize him. Mo Shi nodded. When you recover tomorrow, I'll bring everyone in the base to you for you to recognize. His tone was filled with boundless dominance and ice-cold killing intent. That night, when Mo Shi signed in, he didn't sign any more enhancers. Instead, he signed 10 bottles of recovery potion. He had been too careless in the past. He believed that with his strength, there were very few things in the base that could hurt him. Therefore, they didn't pay much attention to the recovery potion. The effect of the recovery potion was too heaven-defying. It was impossible for him to casually give it to others. Hence, he did not have a lot of recovery medicine in stock, and he had already given Happy his last bottle during the day. But after this incident, Mo Shi understood. He still had to prepare a few bottles of recovery potion on a daily basis. Although he might not be able to use it himself, And he was not a saint who would casually give it to others. But he could not guarantee that under special circumstances, he would use it to save the lives of key people. Just like now. Wuxia did not delay. After getting the recovery potion, he immediately rushed to the hospital. However, when he was more than 900 meters away from the hospital, he suddenly felt that something was not right. He spread out his psychokinesis. In an instant, everything within a radius of 1,000 meters had nowhere to hide. Sure enough, he detected a figure near the flower bed behind the hospital's inpatient department building. Moreover, this person was a psychokinesis. He was controlling a throwing knife to fly toward the window on the second floor. And that window was the window of Xiao Dou's intensive care unit. When Wuxia saw this, the killing intent in his eyes appeared again. The berserk pressure instantly pressed down on him. The black figure only felt as if there was an overwhelming pressure around him that pressed down on him. His psychokinesis was suppressed back into his body in an instant. The throwing knife fell into the flower bed under the window. He was shocked in his heart. His eyes were full of panic and he hurriedly tried to escape. However, the next moment, Wuxia's figure crossed more than 900 meters in an instant and was already in front of him. In the place where Wuxia just stood, under the moonlight, there was only a 10-meter-tall and 30-meter-long dragon shadow left. After a while, the shadow slowly dissipated. When the black figure saw Wuxia suddenly appear, he was even more terrified. He obviously knew Wuxia's strength and knew that in front of Wuxia, he had no chance of escaping at all. Wuxia's eyes were cold and filled with killing intent. Speak. He only spat out this word that was as cold as a knife. The black figure's face was terrified, but he shook his head. No. I can't. Before his voice died away. He felt a violent and unparalleled psychokinesis rush into his brain in an instant. The next moment his brain went blank. His whole person was stunned on the spot. There was no longer any fear on his face. He looked around foolishly. Just like a fool. This was the skill that Wuxia had signed in. Memory plunder. With an unparalleled psychokinesis, he could forcibly plunder other people's memories. And the intelligence of those who had their memories plundered would be greatly reduced in an instant, or even directly become an idiot. In Wuxia's mind, there were many more memories. From these memories, he saw the person who issued the mission to psychokinesis. It was a man wearing a black mask and camouflage clothes. The man with the black mask had a rough voice. He said, "I didn't expect that after we carefully arranged so many clues to lead him to those two people, he still saw through it. We were careless and didn't kill the captain in advance. Go tonight and kill the captain." Wuxia saw the masked man's figure from the memory of psychokinesis. For him, who was at level 10 psychokinesis, his sensitivity to the figure was far beyond that of ordinary people. Next, he just needed to find this person in the base. Then, he would be able to find the real culprit behind the scenes. At this moment, psychokinesis, who had already become a fool, slowly moved his feet. He walked into the distance unconsciously. Wuxia moved his psychokinesis. Bang! There was a soft sound. That person's head suddenly exploded into a cloud of blood mist. These people, no matter who they were targeting, they had almost killed him. Then, they didn't even have the right to be fools. There was only one result for them. Death. Wuxia didn't pay attention to his corpse. With a leap, he had already arrived at the window on the second floor. He pushed open the window and entered the room. In the room, the nurse who accompanied Xiao Dou was taking a nap. Xiao Dou was also sleeping. Wuxia took out a bottle of recovery medicine. He opened Xiao Dou's mouth and poured it down his throat. Then, he jumped out of the ward. He spread out his psychokinesis and explored an area with a diameter of 2 kilometers. With light footsteps, he rushed out of the hospital like a black light with endless murderous intent. Chapter 86. In the base, under the moonlight. Wuxia was like a black shadow that carried boundless killing intent as he flashed past at high speed. Although he did not see the masked man's face from the memory he plundered, he remembered his figure. As a level 10 psychokinesis, he could detect fingerprints. He was even more sensitive to the figure. Ordinary people's perception of the figure was at most the overall impression of height, weight, age, gender, and so on. But psychokinesis could split these overall impressions into countless parts. How wide the shoulders were, how tall the person was, and how much he weighed. How big his ears were, how far apart his legs were, how long his feet were, and how long his fingers were. Psychics only needed to use their psychic power to scan the area, and they would be able to tell what was going on. And Mo Shi's telekinesis had reached level 10, which was even more exaggerated. As long as he swept with his telekinesis, he could clearly see how many eyebrows there were. Therefore, to ordinary people, this small difference was as conspicuous as the brilliant sun in his eyes. In addition to his telekinesis radius of 1,000 meters, the diameter was 2,000 meters. He jumped forward at a speed of 190 meters per second. His whole body was like a radar scanning a diameter of 2,000 meters, moving forward quickly. Not a single person in the base could hide from his mind. With his speed, it would only take him 10 minutes to sweep the entire base. When Mo Shi's scan reached the 5th minute, in the hospital's intensive care unit, Little Bean, who was sleeping, suddenly opened his eyes. Then, he felt something strange in his body. There was no longer the strange feeling in his throat. The wound near his heart no longer hurt. He could even feel that his body was full of power. In surprise, he touched the wound on his chest. There was no pain. He quickly tore the gauze on his chest. There was no wound on his chest. It had long been completely healed. Looking at the intact skin on his chest, his eyes widened. Before he went to sleep, he was half dead. He even doubted if he could ever recover. But when he woke up, his body had completely recovered. Even if he experienced it personally, he still could not believe it. What was going on? Could it be the mysterious powerhouse? Yes, it must be him. During the day, the mysterious powerhouse came. And at that time he had said, "When you recover tomorrow." He recovered by himself at night. It was definitely him. Apart from the mysterious expert, he could not think of anyone else. This made him even more amazed by the mysterious expert's ability. Previously, he only knew that the mysterious expert was very strong, so strong that it was unbelievable. But now, he realized that the mysterious expert was not only powerful, but also had such a strange ability. He was able to recover from his serious injuries in just a few hours. To put it in an exaggerated manner, this was simply akin to regenerating flesh and bones from the dead. How could the mysterious expert be so strong? Thinking of this, he jumped off the bed, went to the closet next to him, and took out his clothes. He tore off the hospital gown and threw it aside. After changing into his own clothes, he immediately felt much more comfortable. The mysterious expert had said that when he recovered, he would bring everyone to him so that he could identify the murderer. Therefore, he had to be prepared in advance. The nurse who was dozing off next to him was awakened by the noise made by Xiao Dou. He was instantly shocked. Who is it? She thought that someone else had broken into the room. And the light in the room was dim, so she could not see clearly at all. Xiao Dou replied, "It's me. It's all Xiao Dou." The nurse did not believe it at all. Little Bean looked like he was on the verge of death. How could it be him? She hurried to the door of the ward. He cried out in fear, "Someone come quickly, save me, save me." Suddenly, the people on the entire floor were awakened by her sharp cry for help. 2 doctors on duty and more than a dozen nurses all ran out. The nurse looked back at the figure in the room and shouted, "Someone broke into the ward. Hurry, hurry!" Everyone was shocked and hurried to the door of the ward. A male doctor wearing glasses strode into the room and slapped the light switch. He shouted to the others, "Protect the patient." As he spoke, he picked up the chair next to him and faced the figure. The others also rushed into the room and went to the bedside. This person broke into the ward in the middle of the night and was likely to harm the patient. However, the other doctor saw that there was no one on the bed except for the bedding. He immediately exclaimed, "Where is he?" Everyone also looked at the bed. Sure enough, there was no patient on the bed. Then, everyone looked at the intruder. "What did you do to the patient?" The male doctor wearing glasses questioned angrily. But halfway through his words, he suddenly stopped. Everyone else was also stunned at this moment. What was going on? They just felt that this person was very similar to the patient. But in a hurry, they did not have time to take a closer look. Now that they looked at it, this person was more than just similar to the patient. They were exactly the same. The biggest similarity was that they were both cross-eyed. Xiao Dou was a little embarrassed at this moment and said, "Well, it's me, Xiao Dou." Everyone's eyes widened when they heard this sentence. The accompanying nurse looked at Little Bean from head to toe in surprise and asked tentatively, "What's wrong?" Are you really Captain Xiao Dou?" Xiao Dou smiled bitterly and said, "Who else could it be other than me? I'm really sorry to scare everyone. Sorry." When everyone heard him admit it and saw the hospital gown thrown aside by him, they were all in disbelief. Is he really Captain Xiao Dou? What's going on? Especially his attending doctor and accompanying nurse. Both of them looked at Xiao Dou as if they had seen a ghost. They knew their patient best. Only 3 hours ago, he was still in a critical period. He could lose his life at any time. But when he woke up, he was alive and kicking. Could it be any more exaggerated? Xiao Dou wanted to explain, but he could not think of any words after thinking for a long time. In the end, he could only honestly say, "Maybe the mysterious strong man saved me." When everyone heard this, instead of being relieved, they were even more surprised. "Do you mean that the mysterious strong man is a doctor? A doctor with great medical skills? He has been hiding in our hospital all this time?" Xiao Dou smiled bitterly and said, "I don't know. In short, I think it should be the mysterious strong man. I can't think of any other explanation except for him," the male doctor wearing glasses said in shock. "The most important thing now is to do a comprehensive examination of your body. Nurse Lee, go and invite the dean here. We must let the dean know about this." Nurse Lee was the nurse who screamed just now. She nodded quickly in surprise. "Okay, I'll go now." With that, she squeezed through the crowd and walked outside. Her footsteps were extremely fast and she went far away. She was wearing flat shoes, but she walked with the momentum of high heels. A moment later, in the courtyard, Nurse Lee's scream came again. "Ah!" Chapter 87. "Ah!" In the hospital's courtyard, Xiao Li's sharp scream was like a sharp blade, cutting through the night sky. Everyone in the ICU felt a chill run down their spines. What happened to Xiao Li this time? They hurried downstairs and came to the courtyard. Then, they saw a headless body lying in the courtyard. Everyone was shocked. "This is psychokinesis. Quick, call the hunter group." If it was psychokinesis, the hunter group couldn't do it. They could only call the hunter group. Soon, the members of the hunter group were invited over. After carefully inspecting the scene, they found 11 throwing knives on the headless body. Then, they found a 12th throwing knife in the flower bed downstairs of the inpatient department. "This person is psychokinesis," a member of the hunter group said. The other person frowned and said, "And the way he was shot in the head also seems to be psychokinesis." Then the two of them looked at each other. There was a hint of awe in their eyes. The dean next to them asked, "Do you know who the murderer is?" The two of them didn't say. They only said, "This matter needs to be further investigated." Then, they asked someone to take the body back. The two members of the hunter group had probably guessed who did it. There were only 2 psychokinesis in the entire base. One was the woman in base C2. But she was now in the detention room and had been injected with a drug that could suppress her psychic power. She couldn't escape at all, let alone kill anyone. The other was the mysterious powerhouse. But they had seen the mysterious powerhouse's methods. He blew up the head without saying anything. He tore people apart without saying anything. Just thinking about it made their scalps tingle. Of course, they didn't dare to say it in public. This matter had to be decided by the leader. At the same time, Mo Shi finally stopped after sweeping through half of the base. His psychic power fell under the water tower. There was a room under the water tower. There was only one person in the room. This person was pacing back and forth. Obviously, he was waiting for a reply. This person's figure completely overlapped with the figure in the memory he had just plundered, whether it was the whole body or a part of it. At this moment, he was not wearing a mask. However, Mo Shi was 100% sure that he was the masked man in psychokinesis's memory. He took a step forward. Rumble. The door of the room, which had been reinforced with steel plates, flew out of the room. The tables, chairs, and cabinets in the room were smashed into pieces. That person was startled and hurriedly spread out his telekinesis. However, very quickly, his telekinesis seemed to be suppressed by a huge mountain. It was instantly suppressed back into his body. He looked up in shock. There was already a person standing in his room. This person looked to be in his 20s. His camouflage uniform had already turned black. His eyes were filled with cold killing intent. Mo Shi's cold gaze swept over this person. The water tower was located in Area F, which was quite far from the zombie farm. Mo Shi had come here a few times in the past 7 or 8 years just to sign in. However, after discovering that the water tower could only produce a few bottles of water at most, he never came again. Who would have thought that old Jianghu the water tower was actually a psychokinesis? And he had been hiding it all this time. Mo Shi's voice was cold. "Speak, who ordered you to do this?" Old Jianghu looked at Mo Shi and retreated, shaking his head. "I don't." In the next moment, his voice abruptly stopped. An enormous amount of telekinesis had already surged into his brain. And his memories were instantly plundered. His brain was also severely damaged. His mind was blank. He was also dumbfounded on the spot. Mo Shi checked these memories. Soon, he confirmed another person. He did not hesitate at all. He turned around. With light footsteps, he rushed out of the room. At the same time, old Jianghu, who was like a fool, also had his head explode with a bang. The room was not big to begin with, and the walls and floor were covered in blood. The headless corpse fell straight to the ground. The furniture debris on the ground was smashed into the air. Mo Shi recalled the figure of the person he had just seen in old Jianghu's memory. He compared it to everyone in the base that he had just scanned. Soon, he confirmed who it was. He strode towards the garbage incinerator in Area C. A group of patrolling members only saw a black shadow approaching from afar at a fast speed. Before they could react, it brushed past them. Then it flew into the distance. Their hearts trembled. Not good, there's an attacker. However, they did not have time to inform the others. They felt their heads swell, their vision went black, and they fainted one after another. At this moment, Mo Shi was in a hurry to track down the mastermind behind the scenes. He would not allow anything to hinder his investigation. Soon, from the garbage incinerator, Mo Shi followed the clues and found the sewage treatment plant in Area W, the farm in Area N, and the cafeteria in Area S. These people were very cunning. Basically, they had one-way connections. And these people were all psychokinesis. Although their telekinesis was not high, at most level 2 psychokinesis. But there were so many psychokinesis in the base, and they were all hidden and never exposed. Obviously, there must be someone or some force behind them. But this force was hidden so deeply in the base. It was really strange. However, Mo Shi did not think about this at all. With such a domineering skill like memory plunder, no matter what strength you had, no matter how deep you hid, you could follow the clues and find out. Only 25 minutes had passed since he left the hospital, and Mo Shi had already found more than 30 hidden psychokinesis. In the end, he finally found a key person in the memories of a repairman. He saw that the person was wearing a wide bamboo hat. Under the shadow of the bamboo hat, his face could not be seen clearly. He always had his arms crossed, and in his arms was a slender sword about 1.5 meters long. He looked like a Jianghu hero. From the memories of others that he had obtained before, he often heard the word hero. Obviously, this hero was the mastermind behind the scenes. After receiving this information, Mo Shi turned his head. He instantly left the repair field. His telekinesis covered a diameter of 2,000 meters, searching for the hero's figure. At the same time, the hunter group had also received the news. In just 20 minutes, they had found 3 headless corpses and 5 unconscious patrols. The leader, Guojutao, frowned. He had already guessed that this was very likely the work of the mysterious powerhouse. But what was the reason for this? Although the mysterious powerhouse was powerful and ruthless, but he had never killed for no reason before. He thought of what happened today. He thought of the zombies that suddenly ran out of the zombie farm and almost bit the mute girl. It seemed that he must have angered Mo Shi. With his understanding of Mo Shi, even if he was angered, he would not casually kill unrelated people. It seemed that he must have found something. Chapter 88. Midnight. The bright moon hung high in the sky. Other than the few people on night watch, almost everyone else in the hunting group was mobilized. They all knew that something big would definitely happen tonight. At the same time, Mo had already used his telekinesis to scan the entire base. However, he didn't find anyone similar to that chivalrous man. Could it be that that person wasn't in the base? However, after thinking about it for a moment, Mo thought of two possibilities. Since that chivalrous man often had to command these psychokinesis, then he couldn't stay outside the base. The reason why his telekinesis couldn't detect them was because they were hiding underground. Now, Mo's telekinesis could penetrate buildings. But there was a limit. If they hid dozens of meters underground, his telekinesis couldn't penetrate. And in the entire base, there were two such places. One was an emergency shelter. At first, the emergency shelter was to avoid nuclear bomb attacks. The depth and thickness were naturally needless to say. The other was the laboratory. In order to prevent the virus from leaking out, the other 9 floors of the laboratory were built underground except for the one floor on the ground. Mo wasn't far from the laboratory at this time. He immediately tapped his feet lightly. In a moment, he had already arrived outside the laboratory door. Without any hesitation, he was about to blast open the laboratory door. However, at this moment, roar! In the laboratory, a beast-like roar came out. In the next moment, the laboratory door was blasted out from inside. It smashed straight towards Mo's telekinesis moved slightly, and the door deviated from its trajectory. It flew past his side. It smashed into a tree 50 meters away. Crack! The tree immediately let out a crisp sound and was broken in the middle. At the same time, from the laboratory door, 23 tall shadows jumped out in a row. Each shadow was more than 3 meters tall. There were barbs on their shoulders. Some of their arms turned into 100-meter-long tentacles. Some of their arms turned into biochemical shields that were taller than a person. Some of their bodies were covered in thick plate armor. They were all mutated zombies. Roar, roar, roar. The man-made mutated zombies in these laboratories were much stronger than the mutated zombies in the wilderness. Such a man-made mutated zombie could probably reach the strength of a level 10 zombie hunter. However, it was clear that Mo had underestimated the strength of these zombies. They roared furiously and charged towards Mo. Based on their speed and strength, Mo had judged that the strength of these mutated zombies was much stronger than the 2 he had seen before. Every single one of them was probably a level 8 or level 9 hunter. At the same time, a figure slowly walked out from the entrance of the laboratory. Under the moonlight. The figure was wearing a bamboo hat. He crossed his arms in front of his chest. In his arms was a long and narrow sword. Swordsman. He finally showed his face. At the same time, the patrol team and the corpse hunting team in Area A heard the commotion and rushed over. When they saw more than 20 mutated zombies, they were all dumbfounded. In the past, when a mutant zombie ran out of the laboratory, they couldn't do anything. But now, so many of them had appeared. Wouldn't it be over if the hunting group didn't come over as soon as possible? But just as they were panicking, the hunting group had already arrived. The leader, Guojutao, saw the situation at the entrance of the laboratory. He also saw Mo. But tonight, Mo was different from before. In the past, Mo always gave people a feeling of being calm and natural, standing aloof from worldly affairs. But tonight, Mo seemed to have an incomparably dense murderous aura. Under this strong murderous aura, Mo didn't seem to have any intention of hiding. He seemed to want everyone to know that if they provoked him, they would die. Seeing this, Guojutao waved his hand to the group members who had rushed over behind him. He signaled them to step back. All the group members were stunned. More than 20 mutated zombies ran out, and they didn't care? What's more, these zombies were rushing towards the figure under the moonlight. They didn't want to save this person? Guojutao stared at the group members and said, "That person, it won't be a problem to deal with these zombies." Everyone was stunned. Was this a joke? Their hunting group might not be able to deal with more than 20 man-made mutated zombies. That person could do it? How could they understand the leader's painstaking efforts? In the eyes of the leader, Guojutao, the mysterious strong man, Mo. was full of violent murderous aura. It was likely that he would attack with all his strength. With Mo Shi's strength, if he attacked with all his strength, just the aftermath alone could easily kill the hunting group members. If these group members really went up, wouldn't they be courting death? At this time, those mutated zombies, when more than 20 meters in front of Mo Shi, actually separated and formed a circle. They surrounded Mo Shi in the middle. The zombies even began to talk about tactics. But they didn't immediately attack Mo Shi. Instead, they stood quietly. They seemed to be waiting for some order. The swordsman spoke. His voice was changed, and it was very hoarse. It was as if he had smoked too much. I knew you would find out sooner or later, but I didn't expect it to be so fast. As expected of the mysterious strong man. Mo Shi's murderous eyes looked coldly at the swordsman at the door of the laboratory. The swordsman saw that Mo Shi didn't speak, so he spoke again. These mutated zombies, each of them has reached the strength of a level 9 hunter. And one of them has reached the strength of a level 10 hunter. I didn't have the chance to test their combat strength before, but today, I met you the mysterious strong man, so I can test it. Then he waved his hand. The 23 mutated zombies suddenly roared. They all rushed towards Mo Shi. The weapons in their hands, sharp blades, claws, spears, whips, tentacles. Almost at the same time, they attacked Mo Shi. Every weapon that was thrown out carried unparalleled power, and the sound of wind whistling could be heard. Guo Jutao, who was in the distance, saw the attacks of these mutated zombies and couldn't help but tremble. The group members behind him all felt a chill in their hearts. If it were them, they wouldn't even be able to take one hit from such an attack. The speed was too fast and the strength was too strong. As the figure said, they had reached the strength of a level 9 hunter. One of them had even reached the strength of a level 10 hunter. It held a 3-meter-long giant sword in its hand. In just one step, it came in front of Mo Shi. The giant sword in its hand was like thunder. It slashed towards Mo Shi. This time, the power was extremely terrifying. When the sword was in the air, there was a faint flame. It was conceivable that if it hit, even a level 10 hunter might not be able to withstand it. The members of the hunting group in the distance were all shocked by what they saw. These mutated zombies were too strong. If their hunting group went up, they would probably be wiped out today. However, the giant sword in the hand of the mutated zombie had just reached Mo Shi. Rip! There was a crisp sound and blood splattered. The mutated zombie with the giant sword was instantly torn into several pieces. Its huge head spun in the air. Chapter 89. Rip! There was a crisp sound of cloth being torn apart. The mutated zombie that was as strong as a level 10 hunter was torn into pieces in an instant. Blood splattered under the moonlight. The light reflected off the blood was a wine-red color. The members of the hunter group gasped when they saw this scene from afar. Someone said, "This is the mysterious powerhouse. It really is the mysterious powerhouse. I think I know him. He's Mo Shi from our zombie farm in Area A." The members of the hunter group who had been to base C9 before, even if they knew that Mo Shi was the mysterious powerhouse, couldn't help but gasp. The last time they saw this scene, they were at the entrance of the hunter group's headquarters. But the strongest person that the mysterious powerhouse tore apart was only a level 5 hunter. But now, he could use his telekinesis to tear apart mutated zombies that were as strong as level 10 hunters. In other words, all hunters below level 10, including level 10 hunters. In front of him, they were all ants that he could tear apart easily. The mysterious powerhouse's strength was insane. At the entrance of the laboratory, Vigilante was stunned when he saw this scene. The strength of the mysterious powerhouse's telekinesis was far beyond his imagination. However, there was no panic in his eyes. Instead, he looked at Mo Shi with interest. In the next moment, the 22 mutated zombies came to within 5 meters of Mo Shi at almost the same time. Their weapons were less than half a meter away from Mo Shi. But, rip! Almost at the same time, all 22 mutated zombies were torn into pieces. Broken limbs flew and blood splattered. At the same time, along with the flying pieces, 22 clouds of dark green smoke exploded around Mo Shi. Bang 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 bang. In just a moment, Mo Shi was enveloped by the smoke. Vigilante's hoarse voice came from the entrance of the laboratory. I knew that you would tear these zombies apart in your anger. So, except for the first mutated zombie, every other mutated zombie was stuffed with more than 10 strong anesthetic bullets. Even a level 10 hunter wouldn't last more than 3 seconds under so many tranquilizer bullets. What do you think of the effect? Everyone in the hunter group saw this scene from afar. They were all worried for the mysterious powerhouse. The man and woman from base C2 were easily taken care of by a single anesthetic bullet. Now, with 22 anesthetic bullets, even the mysterious powerhouse would die. After all, anesthetic bullets were originally developed to deal with hunters and psychokinesis. Although they didn't know who the person at the entrance of the laboratory was, he was definitely not a good person to release so many mutated zombies to deal with the mysterious powerhouse. And if something happened to the mysterious powerhouse, who could deal with him? However, a moment later, when the large cloud of dark green smoke was blown by a gust of wind, everyone's gazes focused. Under the moonlight, Mo Shi's figure stood there. He was motionless. Killing intent spread out from his body. At the entrance of the laboratory, seeing this, the chivalrous man's eyes finally revealed a trace of panic. He thought of all kinds of accidents, but he didn't expect that the mysterious powerhouse wasn't even afraid of anesthetic bullets. One had to know that these strong anesthetic bullets had been specially processed. The amount of drugs in each anesthetic bullet was enough to easily anesthetize a level 10 hunter. Now, with 22 anesthetic bullets, the mysterious powerhouse didn't show any signs of being anesthetized. This was simply inhuman. Of course, he didn't know that Mo Shi had a recovery potion. The recovery potion was extremely effective. It could restore stamina, heal wounds, and remove toxins in one. It could even beautify the skin, delay aging, remove crow's feet, and remove melasma. Even if he was hit by so many anesthetic bullets, he only needed a bottle of recovery potion. He would recover in a moment. At this moment, Mo Shi's telekinesis spread out. It pressed down on the vigilante. However, he found something strange when his telekinesis pressed down. This person's body was emitting a strange telekinesis that resisted Mo Shi's pressure. At the same time, the long sword in his hand was unsheathed. He used his telekinesis to control this long and narrow sword and stabbed it toward Mo Shi. Although there was only one long sword, it gave people the feeling that it was 100 times sharper than the other psychokinesis flying knives. Under the moonlight, the long sword flashed coldly. Almost instantly, it was in front of Mo Shi. Mo Shi had already detected that the telekinesis output from this person's brain was at most level 5 psychokinesis. But under his bamboo hat was a special metal ring. And with the help of this metal ring, this person's telekinesis was greatly enhanced. It could actually reach level 9 or even level 10. Mo Shi had heard the people in the laboratory talk about the brainwave amplification device, when he had nothing to do. It seemed that this metal ring was that thing. That person's eyes were filled with determination. That long sword, under the control of his level 10 telekinesis, was extremely fast. It even broke through the speed of sound and created a sonic boom. Seeing this scene, the hunters in the distance all sucked in a breath of cold air. If that sword attacked them, none of them would be able to block it. Even the genetic martial arts of the hunters would not be able to. However, Mo Shi only retracted his telekinesis. The telekinesis that had spread to a diameter of 2,000 meters suddenly gathered into a beam. It went straight for the chivalrous man. Just imagine, a huge amount of telekinesis within a diameter of 2,000 meters was gathered together at this moment. How terrifying would that be? Under the impact of this torrent-like telekinesis, that long sword that seemed to be able to split mountains and seas was almost instantly broken into more than a dozen pieces. And each piece was crushed into scrap metal by the huge telekinesis. The torrent-like telekinesis continued to rush forward. Seeing this, the chivalrous man's expression changed. He originally thought that by using the brainwave amplification device and forcefully raising his telekinesis to level 10, he would be able to fight against the mysterious expert. In the end, he realized that his thoughts were simply laughable. Although they were both level 10. But telekinesis of the same level was also divided into strong and weak. How could his telekinesis, which was forcefully raised, be compared to Mo Shi's telekinesis that was strengthened through the brain cell enhancer? How could a firefly compete with the bright moon? Mo Shi's torrent-like telekinesis actually blasted on his body as if it was solid. That person was instantly sent flying. He directly crashed into the laboratory door and through several walls behind him. Out of the laboratory, he flew more than 300 meters away. Only then did he fall to the ground. Puffed! A cloud of blood mist suddenly spat out from his mouth. He was extremely shocked. Telekinesis could actually have such a powerful impact. But in the next moment, the shock in his eyes turned into pain. Extreme pain. In the past, when Mo Shi dealt with psychokinesis, he only suppressed their telekinesis back into their bodies. But this time, he directly crushed this person's telekinesis. Suppression and crushing were two completely different concepts. Suppression meant that although the telekinesis was suppressed back into the body, it was still intact. And crushing meant that Mo Shi's telekinesis directly rushed into the other party's brain. It destroyed the other party's brain cells that could produce telekinesis. It forcibly destroyed this person's telekinesis. 300 meters away, that person only felt a buzzing sound in his brain. In the next moment, there was an intense pain in his head. It was so painful that he couldn't stand up at all. He held his head with both hands, kept rolling, twisting, and screaming. Mo Shi moved his telekinesis, lifted this person up, and moved him in front of him. His eyes looked straight at this person. In his cold eyes, murderous intent was revealed. Even in extreme pain, that person could feel that he was enveloped by murderous intent. He said with difficulty, "No, don't kill me. I mean no harm." Crack, Mo Shi moved his telekinesis. The bamboo hat on his head was directly torn into two pieces and flew far away. Under the bamboo hat, a face appeared. A woman. This woman was very beautiful. She had cherry lips, slender legs, and a ponytail. In the distance, a few people in the hunting group saw this face and couldn't help but exclaim, "Captain Ma!" Chapter 90. Under the Moonlight. The person who was suspended in the air by Mo Shi's telekinesis had his large bamboo hat torn off. The next moment, a woman's face was revealed. It was a very beautiful face. The most eye-catching thing was that after her bamboo hat fell off, her ponytailed hair fell down from the back of her head. Seeing this scene, a member of the hunting group suddenly exclaimed, "That's right. Leader Ma." This person turned out to be Ma Wei, Leader Ma, who had pretended to be a mysterious powerhouse a few years ago. She was seen through and left the base later. Her nickname was Sister Ponytail. Recognizing Sister Ponytail, the members of the hunting group were all in disbelief. Leader Ma had left for several years. She was alone in the wilderness. Everyone thought that she had died a long time ago. They did not expect that she would appear in the base's laboratory. And she had such powerful strength. She could even control mutated zombies. But why did she want to be an enemy of the mysterious powerhouse? Everyone racked their brains but could not figure this out. Only Mo Shi was a little surprised. As early as the moment he saw this mysterious powerhouse, his telekinesis had already detected that it was a woman. He just did not expect this woman to be Sister Ponytail. However, no matter who it was, if they dared to provoke him, there would only be one outcome: death. At this moment, Sister Ponytail was still holding her head in pain and struggling. She said with difficulty, "Wait, don't kill me. I have something to say." However, in the next moment, she felt that her mind was blank. There was no fear in her eyes. There was only the constant pain in her head. At this moment, she had become an idiot without any intelligence. Mo Shi would not give her any chance. He would not talk nonsense with her. Not even a word. No matter what reason you had, since you almost killed Happy, your ending was already set. As for what you had to say, there was no need. Mo Shi checked Sister Ponytail's memory in his mind. It turned out that after Sister Ponytail left the base, she wandered alone in the wilderness. At that time, she was a level 4 psychokinesis. When she encountered mutated beasts and mutated zombies, she could deal with them. Over time, through continuous fighting, her telekinesis quickly increased and reached level 5. Furthermore, her psychokinesis had mutated. The mutated psychokinesis could stimulate other people's brain cells and cause them to suffer from psychokinesis. This was also the reason why Mo Shi noticed a lot of psychokinesis tonight. At the same time, She could also control the thoughts of the person whose psychokinesis was triggered by her. Psychokinesis that Mo Shi had found out about was naturally controlled by her. After obtaining these abilities, she felt that these abilities would be useful to the base, so she quietly returned to the base and found her uncle, Chief Ma Yongshi. At that time, Ma Yongshi was preparing to restart Project X, and Project X required the use of psychokinesis. He arranged for her to enter the laboratory. Now, Project X had been preliminarily completed. With her powerful telekinesis, she could already control these man-made mutant zombies. It was also at this time that her uncle, Ma Yongshi, told her to take care of the mysterious expert. Uncle didn't say why, but she could guess what her uncle meant. He remembered that more than 10 years ago, when the residents of E District were in chaos, they had once extracted the blood of a mysterious powerhouse. After laboratory research, they found that the genes in the blood had a lot of powerful abilities. Powerful self-healing ability, terrifying strength, and even the ability to regenerate broken limbs. Especially the ability to restrain Virus X. As for beautifying and delaying aging, it was needless to say. At that time, her uncle had said that if they could obtain more blood of the mysterious powerhouse for research, then the genes of the entire base's human population could be upgraded to a higher level. Everyone would be as powerful as the mysterious powerhouse. At that time, it would be easy to restore the human civilization of the past. It was just that they searched openly and secretly, but the mysterious powerhouse never showed up. Until recently, when Lun Yan's incident happened, Lun Yan and his subordinates were torn apart one by one. At that time, everyone below the stage was shocked beyond words. Mo Shi was the only one who looked calm. His uncle was on the stage and saw it clearly, so he guessed a little. Plus, the gym and other places where the mysterious powerhouse first appeared, most of them were around the corpses. He was finally sure that Mo Shi was the mysterious powerhouse. Originally, he wanted to discuss with Mo Shi to see if he could contribute some of his own blood. But after so many years, with his understanding of the mysterious powerhouse would not casually contribute blood. So, he had to come up with this plan. Previously, when Little Do was shot, she actually wanted to attack Mo Shi and get some of Mo Shi's blood. When the mutated zombie escaped from the laboratory, it was also her uncle Ma Yongshi who asked her to do it. The purpose was also for the blood. As long as it was an enhanced version of the zombie, even if it only made a small cut on Mo Shi's body, it would be of great help to their research. Later, when the zombie almost bit Happy, it was also arranged by Ma Yongshi. That zombie was actually not an ordinary zombie. It was a zombie that had been enhanced by the X2 virus. But the focus of the enhancement was on its claws, so it could not be seen from the outside. But the people they arranged made a mistake in the zombie room. Originally, they tampered with Mo Shi's zombie room, but mistakenly tampered with Happy's zombie room, which led to Happy being bitten. All of this was the cause of the matter. After Mo Shi finished checking these memories, he only felt a slight headache. Previously, after he plundered those people's memories, he only checked the memories of the past few months. So he did not feel uncomfortable. But this Miss Ponytail was a key figure, so he naturally had to check all of her memories. In a short period of time, he had checked so many memories, in addition to the memories of many others he had checked before. It was inevitable that he would feel dizzy. He took out a bottle of brain cell recovery medicine and drank it. He immediately felt that his headache had eased a lot. Then, he ignored Miss Ponytail, who had become an idiot. He turned around, tapped his feet lightly, and walked towards the corpse farm. Behind him, Miss Ponytail, whose IQ was infinitely close to 0, was still holding her head and wailing. But soon, she would not be in pain anymore. Bang! There was a muffled sound. Her head exploded into a cloud of blood under the moonlight. No matter what reason you have, since you have already caused harm to Happy, then you should be prepared to die. Don't say that it's pardonable. Don't say that you have become an idiot to forgive her. Forgiving her is God's business. My mission is to send her to see God. In the distance, the members of the body hunters saw Mo Shi leave. They thought that he had let Miss Ponytail go. They immediately walked towards Miss Ponytail. However, just as they took a few steps, Miss Ponytail's head suddenly exploded. Everyone was shocked. They did not know what Mo Shi had seen from Miss Ponytail's memories. They only knew that Captain Ma had already said that there was a reason for all of this. In the end, Mo sure did not even bother to listen to a word. He directly exploded Captain Ma's head. The viciousness and mercilessness of the mysterious expert was once again deeply imprinted in everyone's hearts. If there was nothing, it was better not to provoke the mysterious expert. Even if there was something, they could not provoke him. Because they would not even have the chance to explain. You're tuning in to the Wisdom Diary YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.